Chapter 4694. Of course I remember. Aoyu replied calmly. You swore a dragon oath in front of father that you would never lay a hand on your brother. You would rather give up the position of Dragon Palace of the West Sea for your brotherhood. That's right. I still remember what happened that day. However, I never expected that the first person to raise the butcher's knife against me would not be the dragon clan of the heavenly abode, but my dearest second brother. It's not that you didn't think about it, it's that you didn't dare to think about it. Aoyu sneered. At that time father was already in a terrible mood. We didn't dare to make father unhappy. However, no one was as bold as you to jump out and swear a dragon oath. Do you know how many princes you have offended with that dragon oath of yours? Old Seventh even mocked you in front of me and eldest brother. If he were to lay a hand on you, would you still remember your dragon oath? So, Aoying's face was as cold as ice. Are you testing me on behalf of Old Seventh? Just as Aoying said that, he suddenly swung his dragon body. His dragon horn glowed as it pierced towards Aoyu's dragon body at lightning speed. Boom! There was a loud explosion as the light from the dragon horn swept through thousands of feet of space. The knots of light were like candlelight being extinguished by a strong wind. Even the dragon-slaying threads were like broken spiderwebs floating in the air. Where the dragon horn landed, Aoyu's dragon body shattered into pieces. Pieces of greenish-brown boulders flew into the sky. Ha ha ha, Old Third, this is the dragon array. Do you think I will face you head-on? Aoyu's voice sounded from another direction. His dragon body naturally appeared in the sky. Roar! Roar! Aoying seemed to have used some secret technique of the dragon clan. After his dragon horn dimmed, the dragon chi around him was quickly withdrawn. At the same time, the threads that had been swept away earlier strangely appeared in the wind again. They were like entangling threads of love that silently fell. Aoying was the same as the other dragons. Although huge dragon runes appeared on the dragon scales where the thin thread landed, trying to block it, sizzling sounds could be heard as the thin thread sank into the scales. Aoying could not help but cry out in pain as the huge dragon tail swung wildly in the wave reef. Damn it! Aoying opened his dragon's mouth and spat out a mouthful of dragon's breath. Terrifying yuan qi descended from the sky and struck the light knots and thin threads that had quietly appeared. Unfortunately, neither the dragon's breath nor the yuan qi could destroy them. Instead, the thin threads became even clearer. Bone-splintering silk. Aoying's eyes were filled with hatred as he roared loudly, seemingly unwilling to accept this. Aoyu, you actually used the bone-splintering silk to kill your own brother? I'm really disappointed in you. Hehe, disappointed? You've been disappointed in so many things. Aoyu sneered. If you were in my shoes, would you be able to guarantee your dragon oath? Can you guarantee that you won't attack the other brothers? Alright. Aoying shouted. Since you've already made the first move, then this king's dragon oath has naturally lost its effect. Don't blame this king for not showing mercy. At this point in time, how can there be any mercy left? Aoying, you're thinking too much. Aoyu was not in a hurry as he spoke slowly. However, the dragon crown on Aoying's dragon head suddenly cracked inch by inch, and a ruby-like jade seal was revealed. Once the jade seal was revealed, it immediately emitted sparks. The sparks landed in the air and created extremely hot ripples. Red marquee seal. Aoyu saw the jade seal and could not help but be shocked. He shouted, the red marquee seal that was stolen from my West Sea Dragon Palace for 10,000 years is actually in your hands? You can go to hell. Aoying did not answer Aoyu. His dragon horn emitted a brilliant light again as he activated the red marquee seal. A scorching flame soared into the sky and instantly enveloped the surrounding 50 kilometers. Within the flame, not only did the light knot and thin threads disappear, even the frozen surface of the sea melted instantly. What was even more terrifying was that the rocks of the Lingbo reef turned into molten iron in the flamed. Damn it. Damn it. Aoyu was panic-stricken. His body appeared in another direction. The void and the dragon scales had already lit up with thin strands of fire. Ha ha ha. Aoyu, do you know what it means to go for wool and come home shorn? Aoying laughed maniacally as his dragon body regained its vitality. Just as he was about to pounce at Aoyu, something strange happened. Within the slightly pitch-black flames, A sharp point that was hundreds of feet long suddenly flashed. There was also a layer of flames around the sharp point. The flames blocked Ao Ying's yuan psyche. When blood splattered, the sharp point easily stabbed into Ao Ying's dragon body. The dragon aura around Ao Ying rapidly dissipated. Furthermore, the red marquee seal above Ao Ying's head emitted a decadent aura. In the surrounding space, the invincible flames immediately disappeared. Ao Ying's dragon claw clawed back, wanting to grab the triple chestnut-shaped sharp point. However, where his dragon claw landed, the sharp point emitted a cold light and blocked his dragon claw. Ao Ying roared helplessly as his dragon body tumbled in the sky. An indescribable misery appeared in his eyes as his roar of disbelief resounded throughout the Lingbo Reef. I know. This is St. Zhang's dragon breaking all. You actually dared to lure the St. River Dragon clan from the Western Paradise into my West Sea. At this moment there was a loud boom. Not far away, under the layer of ice that had already melted, a five-colored flood dragon soared into the sky. That flood dragon landed in midair and smiled faintly. Although I am the young master of St. Jiang, I am also the prince consort of the West Sea Dragon Palace. If something happens to our West Sea Dragon Palace, as the prince consort, how can I just stand by and watch? Jing-qing. Ao Ying screamed crazily. I will not let you off even if I become a ghost, much less Ao Xian. Don't worry, you won't become a ghost. Ao Xian won't come to the West Sea either. The young master of the St. River Dragon clan, Jing-qing, smiled faintly. He looked quite charming. When he looked at Ao Yu again, his previous panic immediately disappeared. He sneered. Ao Ying, don't think that no dragon clan can do anything to you just because you have the red marquee seal. I already knew that the red marquee seal was in your hands. However, at this point, something strange happened again. Chapter 4695. Unfortunately, before Ao Yu could finish his sentence, Ao Yu's voice suddenly became high-pitched. A scream came from his mouth. Looking at his dragon body that had not completely extinguished the flames, a dragon piercing all that was exactly the same as the one on Ao Ying's body appeared. At this time the dragon piercing all rushed out from the bottom of the sea, and pierced deeply into Ao Yu's heart. How? How is this possible? Ao Yu's face was filled with disbelief. He looked at Ao Ying's pain and then looked at the dragon piercing all on his dragon body. He roared, How? How can there be two dragon piercing alls? Jing-qing you. Boom. At this time there was another roar. A dragon with green fog around her body rushed out from the bottom of the sea. The dragon's body looked a little petite. It was obviously a female dragon. Ao Xian? Ao Yu looked at the female dragon and cried out, You didn't go. However, at this moment, Ao Yu seemed to have understood something no matter how foolish he was. Sure enough, Ao Ying, who was in extreme pain earlier, suddenly stopped his rolling dragon body in the sky. With a cold smile on his face he said, Yes, big sister was going to attack old Seven, but she was worried about little brother and specially came to take a look. Damn it. Ao Yu shouted. He used his dragon claws to point at Ao Ying, Jing-qing and Ao Xian in disbelief. He said, I thought I was smart, and my plan was unparalleled in the West Sea. But after so many calculations, I only realize now that I am the stupid one. I am the prey of others. You are really stupid. Ao Ying laughed heartily. For an ambush like the Lingbo Reef, if it wasn't for this king's intention, who would really come to this dangerous reef for no reason to patrol? If I didn't care about my dragon oath, why would I let you make the first move? Now that this king's dragon vow hasn't been broken, and your life is gone, this king is the biggest winner. Ao Yu felt his dragon body getting colder and colder. He knew that he was about to die, but he was really unwilling. He stared at Ao Xian and said word by word, Big sister, are you really so heartless? Oh, you don't blame big sister. Ao Xian said in a low voice. The West Sea is no longer a paradise. All the powers that have the strength to compete have come. I am the princess of the West Sea Dragon Palace. I also have the qualifications. Furthermore, didn't you make a move on third brother first? Haha, Ao Ying, oh Ao Ying. Ao Yu did not wait for Ao Xian to finish speaking as he laughed out loud. He looked at the dragon breaking all that had already entered his dragon body and said, "Don't say that I'm an idiot. Aren't you? An idiot too?" Jingqing immediately moved away from Aoing and laughed. "Oh, you're about to die. Don't try to sow discord between us. Haha, don't worry, big brother-in-law." Aoing laughed and pulled out the dragon breaking all from his body. He said, "How can I not believe big brother-in-law?" However, just as his dragon claw landed on the dragon breaking all, boom. The dragon breaking all emitted a blinding light. The entire dragon breaking all suddenly expanded and a sharp light appeared from the dragon breaking all. It pierced into Ao Ying's dragon body like a hot knife through butter. The dragon breaking all was so powerful that it actually pushed Ao Ying's huge dragon body down 1,000 feet and nailed him onto a huge rock. Roar! Ao Ying's dragon body was extremely convulsing as he shook with all his might. His roar was also filled with confusion. How did this become the real dragon breaking all? Third brother. Ao Xian's faint voice sounded from afar. You wanted to find a replica of the dragon breaking all to fool Ao Yu. However, there is no such replica in this world. Thus, Big Sister had no choice but to give you a real dragon breaking all. Because St. Zhang's dragon breaking all is a pair of male and female. Ha 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 ha. Ao Yu laughed until tears flowed down his face. Although he was exhaling more than he was inhaling, he still forced himself to shout. Aoing, do you still remember what your dragon oath was? If you attack your own brother, you will be nailed to death on the West Sea's rock. Ha ha, the heavens are fair. Aoing, you asked me just now. Is it time for me to ask you now? Do you know what it means to lift a rock and smash it on your own feet? Do you know what it means to invite a wolf into the house? Do you know what it means to? Unfortunately, as he spoke, Ao Yu had already collapsed and no longer made a sound. Ao Yu was dead and Aoing also stopped struggling. This was because the dragon breaking all had nailed him onto the rock. His life was flowing away like the seawater being washed away by the Lingbo reef. He lifted his dragon head helplessly and said weakly, Big Sister, you. However, other than these few words, he could not say anything else. This ambush on the Lingbo reef was his plan. He had bet everything on it. However, he did not expect that he would still lose. Third brother, you must remember in your next life, don't trust any dragon. Ao Xian said calmly, furthermore, any oath, when the price is high enough it will become poison. You have made a lot of promises to Big Sister, but are these promises comparable to the Dragon Emperor of the West Sea Dragon Palace? Alright, I have nothing to say. Aoing lifted his head with difficulty. At this moment within the dragon array, the dragons and sea tribes of the Saint River had already stepped out. These dragons and sea tribes raised their butcher's knives and madly attacked the West Sea tribes. I think, Aoing continued, it won't be long before the news of me and second brother killing each other reaches the West Sea Dragon Palace. Big Sister and brother-in-law will be able to rightfully return to the West Sea. How could you possibly kill each other? Jingqing smiled and said, the 9 princes of the West Sea are very close to each other. When you patrol the West Sea, you will naturally fall into the ambush of the dragons of the Dongtian River. Haha, this framing. You are really good at it. Aoing could not help but laugh. That Jiang Hong of the Dongtian River wanted to get her hands on the West Sea. Now, even if she wants to clear her name. Before Ao Yu could finish his sentence, roar. Another dragon's roar came from the sky far away. Then, a powerful yuan shun swept across the clouds. At the same time, a cold voice sounded. He who said that I can't clear my name? Jiang Hong? Ao Xian, who had been calm all this time, suddenly had a huge change in expression. She exclaimed in a daze. We meet again, Princess Ao. Jiang Hong looked at Ao Xian's panic with interest and smiled slightly. Chapter 4696. The 5-colored flood dragon Jingqing was very confused. He shouted in surprise, why are you here? Before I set up the array, I had already searched the entire sea region. Could it be that you have been following us all along? You think you can find me with your 7th grade elemental power? Jiang Hong snorted in disdain. Besides, I was just flying past the Lingbo reef, and happened to see your dirty business. Otherwise, who would care about you little loaches? Don't you think so, Princess Ao? Damn it. Aoxian cursed in her heart, but she did not dare to show her anger on her face. She smiled and said, Zhonghong, we came all the way to the West Sea. We know very well why. Since you have seen it, I will not hide it from you. What do you want from the Dongtian River? Tell us. We, the Saint Zhang, are willing to make a deal with you. The deal is easy. Zhonghong smiled and waved her dragon claws. However, before the deal, I would like to ask Princess Ao. Between you and me, who is the little loach? Who is only fit to swim in the stinky river? Aoxian clenched her teeth and did not say anything. She knew very well that she had insulted Zhonghong with those words in the past. Now Zhonghong had returned it to her. How could she answer? Senior Jiang, Aoxian whispered pitifully. You are already an 8th grade elemental power dragon. Why do you have to lower yourself to my level? Back then I was just blinded by lard. That's why. Say it. Between you and me, who is the little loach that swims in the stinky river? Zhonghong was not moved at all. Aoxian glanced at Jingqing and then at Aoing, who was on the verge of death but still forced herself to watch the show. She gritted her teeth and answered, Of course it is me. Aoxian, you can't even finish your sentence? Why can't I understand what you are saying? Zhonghong asked Aoxian as she recalled the scene of her being humiliated that day. Yes, senior. Junior Aoxian is that little loach that is only fit to swim in the smelly sewers. Aoxian clearly remembered Zhonghong's reply that day. She also replied word by word. At least you can see your true colors clearly. Not bad, not bad. You will have a bright future. Zhonghong smiled and said, however, before we discuss your future, I want to ask again. What happened on the Liao River of the hidden immortal continent? Who leaked the whereabouts of the heavenly river lineage to the North Sea Dragon Palace? This. When Aoxian heard this, her expression changed drastically. She did not hesitate to point at Aoing and said, Senior Jiang, that was Ao Ying's doing. Junior has already married into Sage Jiang. How could I have information about Liao Jiang of hidden immortal continent? You. Aoing was furious. Just as he was about to retort, a large amount of dragon blood seeped out of the dragon, breaking all. Aoing howled a few times and died. Haha, this is called dead men tell no tales. Zhonghong laughed loudly and said. Aoxian's expression calmed down, and she smiled. Senior is wise, this matter is. This was done by you, Sage Zhangji. Unfortunately, before Aoxian could finish, another thunderous dragon roar was heard. Aozhan descended from the sky from another direction. Aozhan. Jingqing looked as if he had seen a ghost. His dragon body shook. You. Why are you here too? Why can't I be here? Aozhan smiled. If I didn't come, how could I see what Sage Zhangji and his dragon husband did? How could I see Princess Ao killing her 2 younger brothers in order to seize the dragon throne of the West Sea Dragon Palace? If I didn't come, how could I expose Princess Ao's secret to the North Sea Dragon Palace? You. What evidence do you have? Aoxian gritted her teeth and said again. Aozhan raised his right claw and waved it. I don't need any evidence. I just need to prove that I was the dragon guard of the East Sea. Damn it. Aoxian cursed in a low voice. She didn't know how to refute because she knew clearly that the dragon guards of the East Sea Dragon Palace were responsible for the information of the East Sea Dragon Palace and the safety of the princes. He could easily find out what she did back then. Boom. Zhonghong stretched out his dragon claw, and in a loud roar, a golden dragon claw shadow that was hundreds of feet long broke through the air. It leaped across the few miles of space and grabbed Aoxian's dragon body. Aoxian naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for death. She hurriedly swung her dragon tail and pointed at the dragon, breaking all on Aoyu's body at the same time, and pounced on Zhonghong. Pff. Zhonghong's dragon claws tore apart the dragon formation and landed on Aoxian's violent dragon tail. 2 muffled sounds rang out. Oh! What followed was Aoxian's blood-curdling screams. Zhonghong's dragon claws dug deeply into Aoxian's dragon tail, tearing apart the dragon scales. That dragon tail, which was indestructible to ordinary humans, was even torn apart by Zhonghong's claws. Dragon breaking all? It's just a piece of scrap metal in your hands. Seeing the dragon breaking all breaking through the air, Zhonghong sneered. He opened his mouth and spat out a dragon breath, which blocked the dragon breaking all a few miles away. No matter how hard the dragon breaking all struggled, it couldn't move forward even half an inch. "I'll fight you to the death." Jingqing roared and pounced on Aozhan crazily. Aozhan didn't dare to be as casual as Jiang Hong. He roared and urged his dragon body to meet Jingqing's attack head-on. For a moment, the originally cold and cheerless Lingbo Reef once again flared up. Waves of water soared into the sky like pillars, and the airwaves tore apart the clouds in the sky. The battle between the two enormous dragons even smashed many reefs into pieces. Although Aozhan had gained a lot of benefits, he had only cultivated for a short period of time. He was already at a disadvantage in the time it took to eat a meal. Not only was his dragon body torn apart, even his dragon head was damaged a little. However, Jiang Hong, who had already injured Ao Xian, wasn't in a hurry to help. She just watched indifferently. Senior Jiang. Ao Xian understood that although there were many dragons and sea tribes on the Lingbo Reef, only Jiang Hong could control the situation. She hurriedly whispered, "You are the leader of the Heavenly Paradise River. If you spare this junior, Senior Jiang will follow your lead. Moreover, this junior will definitely hand over the dragon throne of the West Sea Dragon Palace. Of course, if you are willing, this junior can help you kill Aozhan. Take his forces." "Humph." Jiang Hong snorted and said, "Why do I need you to interfere with what I want to do?" Senior, this junior knows your difficulties." Ao Xian chuckled and said, "You are a disciple of the Fortune Gate, and this Aozhan is familiar with Dao Master Shao. If I'm not mistaken, Dao Master Shao has already promised the dragon throne of the West Sea Dragon Palace to Aozhan. Although Aozhan has the bloodline of the Hui tribe's patriarch, his strength is still weak. How can he compare to your great talent and strategy? If it's inconvenient for you to make a move, this junior can do it for you. Moreover, today is a good opportunity." Jiang Hong's expression changed slightly when she heard what Ao Xian said. She actually raised her dragon claw. When Ao Xian saw this, she immediately knew that she had hit Jiang Hong's sore spot. She wanted to add more oil to the fire. Unfortunately, before she could say another word, Jiang Hong let out a sinister laugh. With a boom, her dragon claw smashed onto Ao Xian's dragon head, knocking Ao Xian onto the reef. She then said, "Ao Xian, if I want to do something, I will naturally do it. I don't need you to teach me." Roar. Jiang Hong swung her dragon tail. Boom. Jingqing, who was about to attack Aozhan again, was sent flying. His dragon body was badly mutilated. Kill. Jiang Hong roared and spat out a mouthful of dragon breath. The dragon breath rushed into the sky and turned into the image of a dragon bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws. Kill. From the void thousands of miles away, a dozen dragons from the Heavenly Abode River tore through the air and pounced on Lingbo Reef. The leading dragon roared and shouted, reporting to Princess, "The Heavenly Abode River has just received orders and is rushing here." Jiang Hong nodded coldly and said, "There's no need to wait for them. You can all cough cough." Before Jiang Hong could finish speaking, a familiar coughing sound rang in her ears. Master? When Jiang Hong heard the cough, her face was filled with joy. However, a moment later her eyes flashed with panic. When she raised her head to look at the source of the sound, she saw a streak of light flying through the night sky like a shooting star. The holy heavenly horse spread its wings, carrying the beautiful Princess Zixia and the charming Xiao Hua as it descended. The grand ascension stage aura rushed down from the sky like a tsunami. Not to mention the sea tribes, even the hundreds of dragons trembled and fell to the ground uncontrollably. No one dared to move. Disciple greets master. Jiang Hong's face was filled with respect. She transformed into her human form and knelt in mid-air. We greet sect master. Although the Grotto Heaven River Dragon tribe hadn't returned to the soaring Dragon Mountain range, they had already received news from the Fortune Gate. They transformed into their human forms and knelt in mid-air to greet Aozhan. Aozhan was injured, but he grimaced in pain and bowed. Junior greets Master Longed at the West Sea Dragon tribe, the Sage River Dragon tribe, and the sea tribes were all trembling in fear, not daring to raise their voices. Ao Xian and Jingqing's faces were pale as they looked at each other. The two dragons looked at each other and knelt down in the air, shouting greetings Dragon Master Sha. The Pegasus flying carriage stopped in the sky. Xiaohua withdrew his aura and brought Princess Zixia down. His gaze swept across the crowd of dragons and finally landed on Zhang Hong and Ao Zhan. He waved his sleeves and said, "Get up." "Yes, master." Zhang Hong got up and looked at Princess Zixia. She bowed respectfully again and said, "Ninth princess." Chapter 4697. No need to be so courteous. Princess Zixia saw that Zhang Hong's greeting was neither too far nor too close, and she could see Zhang Hong's cautiousness and meticulousness. Ao Zhan also flew over, smiling as he greeted, "This one greets Princess Zixia. You're too polite." Princess Zixia smiled and nodded. Why did Master suddenly come to the West Sea? Before Xiaohua could speak, Zhang Hong hurriedly asked. This disciple received Lu Yi's order and hurriedly led the Holy Paradise River subordinates to the West Sea. Moreover, this disciple heard that our Fortune Gate's first batch of disciples were only close to the West Sea's border, and you weren't there. Oh, this disciple understands. Is Master looking for a place for our Fortune Gate to settle down? To be honest with Master, this disciple already has a plan in mind, and this disciple is heading there to investigate. If Master is free, this disciple can go with this disciple to take a look. Seeing Zhang Hong speaking one sentence after another, it is obvious that she is somewhat guilty. Xiaohua wants to berate her a few words, but thinking of what he saw just now, and the sound transmission between Zhang Hong and Ao Xian, Zhang Hong indeed did not do anything wrong. The reason why Zhang Hong felt guilty was because she understood that Xiaohua didn't intend to make him the master of the West Sea. Moreover, Zhang Hong also faintly knew that Xiaohua wanted the little white dragon to be the master of the West Sea. Since Xiaohua had made such a decision, Zhang Hong rashly coming to the West Sea was clearly looking down on Xiaohua's authority and not listening to his orders. Looking at Zhang Hong and the Holy Paradise River's dragon tribe, Xiaohua had an indescribable feeling in his heart. Everything proved that Zhang Hong was an excellent dragon tribe leader. She had the means and the ability to unify the West Sea, and was qualified to sit on the West Sea Dragon Palace's dragon throne. Unfortunately, Zhang Hong was a female dragon. She did not have the West Sea Fire Dragon soul, nor did she have the West Sea Dragon throne. She could only rely on the Fortune Gate and Xiaohua. Looking at Xiaobai, Xiaohua didn't know if Xiaobai had the ability to lead the West Sea's dragon tribe. However, Xiaobai had the Fire Dragon soul, and now he had the West Sea Dragon throne. Most importantly, Xiaobai had the seven-colored sea god seashell and Xiaohua's approval. With this comparison, Xiaohua felt a little regretful. Of course, he had to give the West Sea Dragon throne to the little white dragon. Because the little white dragon might not be a good leader, just like how he might not be a good Fortune Gate chief. Alas, this is the fate of the heavenly Tao. Xiaohua sighed inwardly. He looked at the restless Zhang Hong and said, Master came to the West Sea for another matter. The matter of our Fortune Gate's foundation will be decided by you and Lu Yi. He is now in charge of the Fortune Gate's affairs. If you have any ideas, you can discuss them with him. Also, if there's anything your clan needs, feel free to inform Lu Yi. Seeing Xiaohua's amiable tone, no different from before, Zhang Hong heaved a long sigh of relief. However, before she could speak, a fierce expression flashed in Xiaohua's eyes, and he swept the members of the dragon clan with his gaze before he said coldly, I've seen everything that all of you have done. I'm also aware of how Aoing and Ao you died. Zhang Hong, you've done well. You didn't fall for Ao Xian's bewitchment. This old man is relieved. Master. Zhang Hong was so frightened that she broke out in cold sweat. She hurriedly knelt down and said, Disciple has always engraved Master's teachings in her heart. Although Disciple has some selfish thoughts, Disciple knows what to do when it comes to matters of principle. And get up. Xiaohua nodded. How do you plan to deal with the Sage River Dragon Clan? Kill. Zhang Hong said without hiding anything. The Sage River Dragon Clan belongs to the Western Paradise world. They actually dared to touch the West Sea. Zhang Hong. Jingqing hurriedly shouted. Your Paradise River belongs to the hidden immortal mainland. How dare you touch the West Sea? Ao Xian's expression changed when she heard that. She quickly looked at Xiaohua. As expected, Xiaohua smiled leisurely and said, Because our Fortune Gate wants to expand in the West Sea in the future, the Paradise River Dragon Clan came to the West Sea. Jiang Hong, these two members of the Dragon Clan, and the Sage River Dragon Clan, there's no need to kill them. Take them to the West Sea Dragon Palace. I'm going to meet the Dragon Master of the Dragon Island. The situation in the West Sea is so chaotic. The two princes of the West Sea Dragon Palace were killed by the first princess. If our fortune gate doesn't stay in the West Sea Dragon Palace, wouldn't the West Sea Dragon Palace fall into chaos? Jiang Hong was overjoyed when she heard that. She understood that the West Sea Dragon Palace was controlled by the Dragon Island and the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace. No one could interfere. The Fortune Gate happened to see the internal strife in the West Sea Dragon Palace. This was the perfect opportunity and reason to insert the Fortune Gate's forces into the West Sea Dragon Palace. In that case, it was better for Ao Xian and Jing Qing to be alive. He could even use these two members of the Dragon Clan to extend his hand into the Sage River Dragon Clan. Yes, Master. Jiang Hong replied. On the distant sea, there were already waves rising to the sky. It should be the Paradise River Dragon Clan coming over. Ao Xian and Jing Qing heaved a sigh of relief when they heard that. Although they didn't know whether they would live or die in the West Sea Dragon Palace, at least they didn't have to die for now. Wang Wang. At this time, within 1,000 li, there was another rumbling sound. Countless mayfly insects flew out from the void as if they had smelled something fishy. These mayfly insects were of different sizes, and the biggest one was more than 100 zhang tall. Do you see that? Xiao Hua sneered, and his voice rumbled like thunder. This is the biggest enemy our 3 continents and 3 rivers and 4 seas are facing. These strange insects are called mayflies, and they have the power to destroy the world. All of us venerables gathered at the Nacre Lake to discuss how to exterminate these strange insects. However, even our gathering was disrupted by these mayfly insects. You people don't know self-respect, you don't know righteousness, and you're still looking for small benefits. What's the meaning of this? Master. Jiang Hong hurriedly called out. Disciple has long heard about the power of these mayfly insects. Seeing them today, they are indeed powerful. Should we avoid them or exterminate them? Exterminate them. Xiao Hua said without hesitation. These mayfly insects not only devour dragons with cultivation, but also ordinary members of the sea. If you don't exterminate them, they will raise the West Sea to the ground. Everyone, exterminate these mayfly insects. Jiang Hong didn't say anything else after hearing that. She waved her dragon claws, and while commanding the dragons of the heavenly abode, she rushed into the swarm of mayfly insects. Saints of the Jiang clan, West Sea Dragon Palace, attack as well. Xiao Hua ordered indifferently. Yes, Junior understands. Ao Xian and Jing Qing knew that this was a good opportunity to redeem themselves. After receiving the order, they immediately commanded the saints of the Jiang clan to rush into the swarm of mayfly insects. Even with Xiao Hua and the other Taoist experts, the battle between the heavenly abode and the saints of the heavenly abode and the mayfly insects lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Seeing the last mayfly insect explode under Xiao Hua's punch, Jiang Hong and the other dragons of the heavenly abode could finally relax. Looking at the injuries all over her body, Jiang Hong smiled bitterly. She was no longer a member of the Dragon Clan who had a clear understanding of her own body. In this world, there were very few members of the Demon Clan who had a tougher body than the Dragon Clan. However, this kind of Dragon Clan body was as fragile as a piece of paper in front of the strange insect's hind legs. Every single scar on her body caused Jiang Hong to feel a lingering fear. Ever since she achieved great success in her cultivation, Jiang Hong had never suffered such heavy injuries. And today, if Xiao Hua wasn't here, that several 100 feet long strange insect could really exterminate all the Dragon Clan members. The mayfly insects lived up to its name. Xiao Hua released the Netherworld origin power and collected the souls of the dead dragons and sea clans. Then he said indifferently, "This old man hopes that today's battle will let you see the situation of the entire war clearly. This is the moment of life and death for our 3 continents. The importance of working together is far more important than the scheming between each other. Do you think the dragon throne of the West Sea Dragon Palace is easy to sit on? If you can't destroy the mayfly insects and bring peace to the West Sea, even if you sit on the dragon throne, you will still be overthrown by the other dragons." Yes, this Junior understands. Ao Xian and the others replied in unison. Let's go to the West Sea Dragon Palace, Xiao Hua said with a wave of his hand. Naturally, going to the West Sea Dragon Palace wasn't just a day. Before Xiao Hua and the others could get close, the Yaksha of the West Sea Dragon Palace had already seen the mighty Heavenly Abode River clan. The Yaksha turned pale with fright and hurriedly dived into the sea to report. Xiao Hua had already seen it. He smiled and ordered the disciples of the Jianghong sect to report. Boom boom boom. After a few moments, pillars of light shot into the sky and tore apart the dark clouds. Amidst the sounds of string instruments, several dragons flew out on the waves. The leading dragon's body was yellow. After seeing Xiao Hua, he hurriedly transformed into human form. An old dragon with a bitter face and gray hair appeared. The old dragon bowed and said, Junior Ao Su of the Gue clan greets Dragon Master Xiao. Ao Su? Xiao Hua frowned. He looked up and down at this dragon with the strength of the lower 9th grade and asked curiously, You're named after the earthly branch? I'm afraid you're also an elder of the Dragon Palace? Good Dragon Master knows. Ao Su said with a smile, This junior is not an elder of the Dragon Palace, but a second elder of the Dragon Palace. After saying that, seeing Xiao Hua's confusion, he explained, The 10 elders of the Dragon Palace are the heads of the 10 clans of the Dragon Island. They are named after the 10 heavenly stems. The 12 second elders of the Dragon Palace are named after the 12 earthly branches. They are responsible for the affairs of the Dragon Palace and report to the 10 elders of the Dragon Palace. Under the second elder, there are 60 deacons who are responsible for the miscellaneous matters of the Dragon Palace. They are named after the combination of the heavenly stems and earthly branches. The disappearance of the West Sea Dragon King and Dragon Throne is very important. The 9th elder of the Dragon Palace can't leave the Dragon Island for a long time, so he sent me to the West Sea Dragon Palace to represent the Dragon Island to assist the 3 Sea Dragon Kings and deal with the aftermath. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua understood and said with a smile, Although this Xiao is the Dragon Master of the Dragon Island, I still don't know much about the Dragon Island. Please forgive me. Dragon Master will go to the Dragon Island more in the future. You'll naturally understand. Ao Su said with a smile. Junior Ao Xiang of the East Sea greets Dragon Master Xiao. Beside Ao Su, a tall and valiant dragon hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. Chapter 4698. I just saw your father's martial prowess at the Jade Pool meeting, and now I see your martial prowess again. I'm really surprised. Why does the heavens favor your East Sea Dragon Palace? Each generation is stronger than the previous. Xiao Hua smiled and helped Ao Xiang up, praising him. Ao Xiang was very humble. He smiled and said, Senior, you flatter me. How can I compare to my father's political and martial prowess? After Ao Xiang saw Xiao Hua, a fat dragon hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. Junior Ao Qian from the West Sea greets Dragon Master Xiao. Looking at this dragon with a pair of fish eyes, Xiao Hua sighed inwardly. He nodded and said, This old man hasn't seen you before, but just now in front of Lingbo Reef I heard your name. Oh, who did Dragon Master hear about me in front of the Lingbo Reef? Ao Qian's face was full of joy, as if it was an honor for Xiao Hua to hear his name. He hurriedly asked, There are a lot of dragons talking about you. Xiao Hua said meaningfully, Aou Aoing, Ao Xian and Jing Qing. When Xiao Hua mentioned Aou and Aoing, Ao Su and Ao Xiang did not think much of it. But when Xiao Hua called out the name of the Saint River dragon race, the 2 dragons turned pale with fright. They looked at each other, as if they had thought of something. Looking at Ao Qian again, his face was actually blurred. He asked curiously, What? Big sister actually returned to the West Sea? Why didn't she come to the West Sea Dragon Palace? Why did she go to the Lingbo Reef? Xiao Hua didn't know whether Ao Qian was really stupid or pretending to be stupid, but he had a deep impression of the dragon's cunning. He only nodded at Ao Su and said, Let's talk about it after we enter the Dragon Palace. Yes, Dragon Master, please. Ao Su didn't dare to neglect. He hurriedly bowed and asked Xiao Hua to go first. At this time, Princess Zixia, accompanied by Jiang Hong, walked out from the group of dragons behind. When Ao Su saw, he thought for a while, and also raised his hand with Ao Xiang and Ao Qian. Princess Zixia understood that her status with Xiao Hua was not fixed. If she was the 9th princess of the Immortal Palace, the second elder of the Dragon Island might not be so polite. Aosu raised his hand was also because of Xiaohua's face, so she didn't dare to be disrespectful. She smiled gracefully and raised her hand to return the greeting. Aosu completed his etiquette and ignored Princess Zixia. He hurriedly accompanied Xiaohua into the West Sea Dragon Palace. In his early years, Xiaohua had already walked through the West Sea Dragon Palace. However, at that time, his eyes were filled with half of the treasures in the West Sea Dragon Palace's treasury. He didn't look at the Dragon Palace at all, nor did he stay in the main hall for long. Today, as soon as he stepped into the main hall, he saw that the hall was overflowing with treasure light. It was oppressively magnificent, even more dazzling than the South Sea Dragon Palace. "Master Long, please take a seat." Aosu respectfully gestured. Xiaohua wanted to decline, but after thinking for a moment, he raised his hand and pushed the door above his head. Boom! A soaring dragon aura mixed with red light forced its way to the top of the hall. The Dragon Master's crimson dragon crown appeared above Xiaohua's head. Seeing Xiaohua take out the scarlet dragon crown, Aosu was delighted. After all, the main seat in the main hall of the West Ocean Dragon Palace was the symbol of the dragon race's commander. It was inevitable that it would be inappropriate for a Dao sect disciple to sit on it. However, aside from the main seat, where else could Xiaohua sit in the main hall? Now that Xiaohua was wearing the scarlet dragon crown, even the true ruler of the West Sea would have to bow and salute him. Xiaohua's arrival not only preserved the dignity of the human race's grand ascension stage, but also preserved the might of the dragon race. No one would have any doubts about Xiaohua's arrival. Xiaohua sat down. Aosu, Aoxiang, and Aoqian also accompanied him at the side. The dragon generals and officials of the West Sea Dragon Palace also followed the prescribed order and stood in attendance. In the end, Princess Zixia, Jianghong, and Aozhan entered again. Princess Zixia sat in a guest seat in a corner of the hall, accompanied by 2 members of the dragon clan. "I didn't know that Master Long had come to the West Sea Dragon Palace, so I didn't greet you. Please forgive me, Master Long." Aosu said politely. "May I ask why Master Long has come today?" Xiaohua smiled and replied politely, "I had to go to Dragon Island to pay a visit to the Grand Elder. But I didn't know the way to Dragon Island, so I came to the West Sea Dragon Palace to disturb you. I didn't ask my disciples to notify you in advance." Upon hearing that Xiaohua wanted to go to Dragon Island, both Aosu and Aoxiang heaved a long sigh of relief. Unfortunately, before they had a chance to speak, Xiaohua continued. "However, aside from this, I have another important matter to attend to, and I came to the West Sea Dragon Palace specifically." Aosu's heart tightened, and he hurriedly smiled. "May I ask if Master Long has anything to do with Wave Reef?" "Yes, that is indeed the case." Xiaohua nodded and didn't explain any further. He raised his head and said, "Jianghong, escort Aoxian and Jingqing to the main hall, and bring Aoing and Aoyu's corpses as well." "What?" Upon hearing this, Aoqian flew up from the jade pillar he was sitting on and exclaimed, "How could second brother and third brother? I only sent third brother to patrol Wave Reef. Second brother, he didn't even leave the West Sea Dragon Palace." Aosu's face was gloomy, and his eyes flashed with anger. He glared at Aoxiang fiercely. It was clearly the East Sea Dragon Palace's crown prince's idea to send the 4 princes out to patrol. He was kept in the dark. Aoxiang's expression changed slightly, but he instantly calmed down. He was the one who came up with the idea, and Aoqian was the one who made the decision. What did it have to do with him if something happened? Jianghong got up and flew out of the hall. Not long after, not only did she escort Aoxian and Jingqing, but she also brought Aoing and Aoyu's corpses to the main hall. She also brought the heavily injured Aoshun, Aobai, and the rest of the West Sea Dragon clan to the main hall. "Big sister, you. Aoqian flew above the main hall and looked at Aoxian in exasperation. He had a pained look on his face. Then, he landed beside the corpses of Aoing and Aoyu. He hugged the corpses of the 2 giant dragons and cried, "Second brother, third brother, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have sent you out to patrol." At this point, he suddenly realized something and hurriedly said to the outside of the hall, "Quick, quick. Send 100,000 members of the Sea Clan to welcome fourth brother, sixth brother, and seventh brother. Don't let anything happen to them. Yes, Your Highness, your subordinate has received the order. Outside the palace door, a dragon general immediately responded and urged his dragon body to fly out. Seeing that the dragon general had left, Ao Qian stood at the entrance of the main hall and looked outside for a long time, like a parent waiting for their child to return. Xiao Hua sat on a huge jade chair and looked on indifferently. Although his figure didn't match the jade chair, the aura of the crimson dragon crown was like a mountain weighing down on the hearts of all the dragons, and no one dared to look directly at this human grand ascension stage being. First Crown Prince. Ao Su waited for a moment before reminding, if I'm not mistaken, the 3 crown princes should be on their way back from their patrol. The West Sea is the foundation of the West Sea Dragon Palace, and since they're the crown princes of the West Sea Dragon Palace, they should be responsible for patrolling. Don't give up on eating just because of some other mishap. Yes, Dragon Envoy, you're right. Ao Qian replied in a low voice before silently turning around and saying, my West Sea Dragon Palace was very lively before. Father was handling government affairs on the dragon throne, and the 9 of us were playing around in the main hall. Now that I've lost 2 of my brothers, I'm a little flustered. At this point, Ao Qian bowed to Xiao Hua and said, now that Dragon Master Xiao has come to the West Sea Dragon Palace, I'll have to ask Dragon Master Xiao to make the decision. I'm a little afraid to face reality. I'm an outsider, and it's not good for me to interfere too much in the affairs of the West Sea Dragon Palace. Xiao Hua replied with a smile, that day the Dragon King of the East Sea, Ao Qian, specially reminded me. Therefore, this matter should be presided over by Ao Su, Dragon Envoy Ao. Alright. Ao Su thought for a moment, raised his head to look at Ao Xiang, and replied, I'll preside over this matter with the East Sea Dragon Palace's crown prince. I'll listen to Dragon Envoy. Ao Xiang didn't dare to refuse and nodded in agreement. Then, Ao Su looked around and waved his hand to signal for most of the dragon generals and sea race to leave, leaving only a few generals behind. Then, he ordered Ao Shun and Ao Bai to explain the situation. Ao Shun and Ao Bai naturally didn't dare to hide anything, and told him everything about the Lingbo Reef. Then, Ao Yu's subordinates also told him about their own experiences. Finally, Ao Su's face darkened. He looked at Ao Xian, suppressed the anger in his heart, and asked in a deep voice, Ao Xian, what they said just now is the truth. Ao Xian said in a low voice, that's right. Ao Su sighed and said, tell me how you discussed, how you schemed. Tell me everything in detail. Ao Xian had no choice at this time. She told him all the details of how she discussed with Aoing and how to kill Ao Yu. As for the truth, there was no proof. In the end, Ao Xian argued, I actually didn't have any other ideas, but because I couldn't stand Ao Ying's bewitchment, I did this. Killing Aoing was also Ao Ying's own bewitchment? Ao Su sneered, looked at Jingqing and asked Jingqing, it seems that St. Jiang has a big plan. If Dongtian River can come to the West Sea, why can't St. Jiang? Jingqing sneered, as far as I know, the Redland River Dragon tribe has come to the West Sea a long time ago. Ao Su wanted Jingqing to confess, but looking at him, he was afraid that he wouldn't tell the truth. Ao Su thought for a moment and said, I can't make a decision on this matter, so I'll put you in the prison of the West Sea Dragon Palace first. I'll report the details to Dragon Island, and Ao Xiang will report to the East Sea Dragon Palace. We'll talk about it when there's news. After that, Ao Su looked at Xiao Hua respectfully and asked, Dragon Master, what do you think of this? Of course. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Dragon Master, you're fair. I'm relieved. That's good. Ao Su replied, this junior will order people to prepare the teleportation channel to Dragon Island. This junior has a duty and cannot accompany Master Long to Dragon Island. This matter is just right. Master Long, please pass on this junior's opinion and let the elders decide. Chapter 46-99. Don't be impatient, don't be impatient. Xiao Hua smiled faintly and waved his hand, saying, regarding this matter, this old man has another opinion. Listen to me first. Oh, Dragon Teacher Xiao, please speak. Ao Su was stunned for a second. Then his gaze swept over Jiang Hong as if he had already understood something. During the Jade Lake Conference, the various forces venerables have already decided that our Tao Gate will set up a defense against the world-destroying strange insects, preventing them from harassing the West Sea, and preventing them from attacking the West Sea Dragon Palace. Xiao Hua said on that day, the Dragon Hall's second elder also had the intention to invite this old man to oversee the West Sea Dragon Palace. But this old man is a Tao Gate cultivator. How can I oversee the Dragon Palace? Therefore, before the second elder could say anything, this old man had already refused. Previously, this old man had thought that our Fortune Gate's disciples only needed to eliminate the strange insects at the West Sea's border, and did not need to care about the West Sea Dragon Palace's matters, avoiding any disputes with the West Sea Dragon Palace's sea tribes. However, through this matter, this old man discovered that the West Sea Dragon Palace is not stable because the Dragon Palace's lord is not present, and various forces are trying to gain benefits in the West Sea. Just look at Ao Xian, who has already married into the St. River's dragon tribe, but she actually led a foreign force to kill her two brothers. That Thousand Beasts Sacred Ground's Crimson Ground River Dragon tribe has also extended their hands to the Dragon Palace. Dragon Envoy Ao Xiang, such a chaotic West Sea Dragon Palace has already become an unstable rear. How can our Fortune Gate's disciples be at ease to resist the strange insects? Who can guarantee that when our Fortune Gate's disciples are fighting a bloody battle, some unknown force will not stab us in the back? Who could guarantee that the already murky waters of the West Sea wouldn't become even more murky and blood wouldn't seep in? And if they can't, then this old man feels that our Fortune Gate should be responsible for our disciples, our Fortune Gate should be responsible for our Fortune Gate's rear, and our Fortune Gate should be responsible for the West Sea's peace and stability. Ao Su thoughtfully looked at Ao Xiang and asked, Ao Xiang, can you guarantee this? Ao Xiang was tongue-tied. How could he dare to guarantee this? Facing Aoing and Aoyu who were killed because of their schemes, even if the Lord of the East Sea was here, he could not guarantee, right? Dragon teacher, what do you mean? Ao Su asked. My Fortune Gate wants to send a disciple to guard the West Sea Dragon Palace. Xiao Hua said indifferently, this disciple will not comment on any of the affairs of the West Sea Dragon Palace, nor will he interfere with any of the internal affairs of the West Sea Dragon Palace. But he has the right to know everything that happens in the West Sea Dragon Palace, and he has the right to pass on any information that is harmful to our Fortune Gate. The Fortune Gate's disciples are humans after all. Isn't it inappropriate for them to guard the West Sea Dragon Palace? Ao Su pondered for a moment and intentionally sent the topic into Xiao Hua's hands. He said, Master Xiao, please understand. Haha, rest assured, Dragon Envoy Ao. Xiao Hua laughed. There are also members of the Dragon Clan among my Fortune Gate's disciples. As he said, Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, Zhang Hong, you come over. Yes, Master. Zhang Hong was overjoyed. She hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. Currently, all matters related to my Fortune Gate are being handled by this old man's disciple Lu Yi. Xiao Hua said to Ao Su. And Zhang Hong is Lu Yi's wife. She is a member of the Dragon Clan, and before marrying into my Fortune Gate, she was the little princess of the Holy Paradise River. This old man has decided that she will represent my Fortune Gate to guard the West Sea Dragon Palace. Ao Su nodded slightly and smiled. This junior has long heard that the Holy Paradise River's Dragon Clan has produced an outstanding commander, but I didn't expect this Dragon Clan member to have already married into the Fortune Gate. Master Zhao's arrangement is wonderful. Zhang Hong is a member of the Dragon Clan, and she is also the wife of the Fortune Gate sect chief's disciple. This junior has no objections. However, this junior cannot make the decision on this matter. I need to send a message to the Dragon Island, and senior can go to the Dragon Island to explain everything. As for the East Sea Dragon Palace, Crown Prince needs to send a message. Yes, this junior will report to Royal Father. Ao Xiang hurriedly stood up and answered. But Royal Father does not. Zhang Hong glanced at Xiao Hua and smiled faintly. She said to Ao Xiang, I'm afraid Crown Prince has misheard. My sect chief has decided to let me guard the West Sea Dragon Palace on behalf of the Fortune Gate. This is my Fortune Gate's decision. You only need to send a message. As for how the East Sea Dragon King will respond, that is your East Sea Dragon Palace's matter, and has nothing to do with my Fortune Gate. AI. as expected of the dragon clan with the ambition to rule the West Sea Dragon Palace. Xiaohua sighed. Zhang Hong's words were ingenious and dignified. If Xiaohua had said these words, it would be considered bullying the weak. But if Zhang Hong said these words, not only would it raise the Fortune Gate's prestige, it would also establish Zhang Hong's foundation in the West Sea Dragon Palace. That's right, this old man has the same intention. Xiaohua said to Ao Su, "Is the transmission array to the Dragon Island ready? This old man's matter is 100 times more important than the West Sea Dragon Palace's internal strife. It cannot be delayed." Ao Su was very happy to see Xiaohua inserting his forces into the West Sea Dragon Palace without shedding a drop of blood, because the Dragon Island had originally planned to let Xiaohua restrain the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Moreover, he also understood that even if the East Sea Dragon Palace's lord received this news, not to mention that what was done could not be undone, even if Xiaohua waited for his decision, Ao Su would have to consider the consequences of not letting Zhang Hong enter the West Sea Dragon Palace. Because the Fortune Gate's disciples could find an excuse at any time, saying that the West Sea Dragon Palace's situation would affect their safety. At that time, if the Fortune Gate forced their way into the West Sea Dragon Palace, it would not only be the West Sea Dragon Palace that would lose face, but also the East Sea Dragon Palace's reputation. Therefore, Ao Su believed that the East Sea Dragon Palace would make a wise choice and accept the fact that Zhang Hong was overseeing the West Sea Dragon Palace. Therefore, Ao Su hurriedly smiled and said, "Dragon Teacher Xiao, please wait a moment. The transmission array to the Dragon Island is not that easy to set up. On one hand, the transmission array needs to be activated, and on the other hand, we need to obtain the Dragon Island's approval through a transmission array. So troublesome." Xiaohua frowned and grumbled in displeasure. "This matter involves my Dragon Island's defense, so I ask for Dragon Teacher Xiao's forgiveness," Ao Su carefully explained. At this time, Xiaohua raised his head again, looking outside the West Sea Dragon Palace, and said with a smile, "He came just in time. Looks like he should also make a trip to the Dragon Island." "Who?" Ao Su was slightly taken aback, somewhat puzzled, and wanted to release his spiritual sense. At this time outside the West Sea Dragon Palace, a kind of raging dragon's might came from the sea, instantly enveloping the entire main hall, and even the entire Dragon Palace. A kind of indescribable complex feeling emerged from the bottom of Ao Su and the other dragons' hearts. Whether it was fear, respect, or worship, Ao Su's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly flew up from the jade pillar, exclaiming in surprise, "Could it be?" Boom boom boom. The originally quiet jade-like seawater suddenly emitted a rumbling sound. Layer after layer of dragon tattoos mysteriously appeared in every inch of the seawater. None of the dragon tribe members could remain still. Some of them could not endure the heavy pressure of the dragon's might and crawled on the ground. Some of them trembled and forcefully supported themselves. Even Ao Su curled up his dragon tail, not daring to reveal his dragon body under the dragon's might. His surprise was mixed with bitterness. He understood that this was a kind of natural suppression that a high-grade dragon instinctively had over a low-grade dragon, and it was not something that could be resisted by any strength. "He fellow Taoist Yun." Xiaohua patted the crimson dragon crown on top of his head. In an instant, its brilliance spread across the entire West Sea Dragon Palace, slightly reducing the invincible dragon's might. After that, he flew out of the main hall, laughed and said, "You should restrain your dragon's might a little. Otherwise, before you can swim to the West Sea Dragon Palace, your dragon descendants will all turn into sieves." Upon hearing Xiaohua's voice, a dignified voice echoed out from the sea, "Even if I restrain my dragon's might, they will still not be able to stand in front of me." Along with the voice, the dragon's might retracted like a tidal wave. In the distance, a golden light flickered, and a few flaky shadows emerged from the water. When they landed in front of Xiaohua, they rushed to a spot and transformed into a fist-sized ball of light. Swoosh! Right after the ball of light was formed, it exploded noiselessly, revealing a huge dragon like an ink brush. Wasn't he Reverend Yun? Reverend Yun was right. Although he had retracted his dragon's might, the unparalleled upper-grade pressure still came from the hearts of Ao Su and the other dragons. Their bodies were still trembling, and they could not remain calm. Nevertheless, Ao Su dared not to be negligent. He forced himself to endure the pressure, then raised his dragon head respectfully and cried out, Junior Aosu, the second elder of the Dragon Palace, offers greetings, Reverend Yun. Reverend Yun raised his dragon head and coiled his dragon body. Immediately, a golden light flickered again, and Reverend Yun transformed into his human form. The innate upper-grade pressure immediately vanished. Then, he raised his hand and said, You may rise. Thank you, Reverend. Aosu felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his mind. He hastily transformed into his human form and answered with a flattering smile. Then, the group of dragons hurriedly bowed and greeted him. Reverend Yun looked at them from time to time and nodded. Fellow Taoist Yun, please take a seat. Xiao Hua said smilingly, In this dragon palace, I can never be compared with you. Fellow Taoist, you are too polite. Reverend Yun nodded slightly and sat down on the seat of honor. Xiao Hua, Aosu, and the others sat beside him. Fellow Taoist Yun, you're quite fast. Xiao Hua smiled and said, I thought you wouldn't be able to make it to the Dragon Island. Reverend Yun looked around and asked, Didn't Aoshi forbid our fortune gate from meddling with the West Ocean Dragon Palace? Why did fellow Taoist touch his reverse scale? Fellow Taoist, you may not know, but this is what happened. Xiao Hua told Reverend Yun the whole story in front of Aosu, and finally said, I was worried that something might happen to the West Ocean Dragon Palace again, so I sent Zhang Hong to guard the palace. Chapter 4700. Oh, so that's how it is. Reverend Yu nodded and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao, 40% of our Fortune Gates disciples have entered the West Ocean and are looking for a place to settle down. However, they are not familiar with the West Ocean and haven't found a suitable island. That's why I thought of coming to the West Ocean Dragon Palace to ask. Senior. Aosu hurriedly said, Junior knows of a blessed land in the depths of the West Ocean. The heaven and earth energy there is abundant and is suitable to be the Fortune Gates foundation. If Senior needs it, Junior can point it out to you. Oh, where is it? Reverend Yun raised his head and asked. Aosu quickly took out a dragon shell and handed it over to Reverend Yun. Senior, please take a look. I won't take a look. Reverend Yun took the dragon shell and handed it over to Zhang Hong. Zhang Hong, take a look. If it's suitable, let me send a message to Lu Yi. He's worried about it. Yes, disciple understands. Zhang Hong answered and took the dragon shell. She released her yuan sense to check it, and a joyful expression emerged on her face. Then she hurried away. After Zhang Hong left, another dragon general swam in and said respectfully, Seniors, the teleportation channel to the Dragon Island is ready. Good. Xiao Hua rose to his feet and said smilingly, Fellow Taoist Yun, as the saying goes, it's better to come at the right time than to come at the right time. Come with me to the Dragon Island. All right. Reverend Yun nodded and rose to his feet. Aosu also hurried ahead of Reverend Yun and Xiao Hua, leading the man and dragon to the back palace of the West Ocean Dragon Palace. Judging from his eagerness, he did not look like a second elder of the Dragon Palace. Xiao Hua had used the teleportation formation of the West Ocean Dragon Palace before, so he was not unfamiliar with it. Inside a palace that was several thousand feet in size, black and white light surged out like waves. Xiao Hua knew that this was the teleportation formation of the West Ocean Dragon Palace. When the group of dragons in bright armor saw Xiao Hua and the others coming over, they all bowed and saluted, opening the door of the hall. Xiao Hua flew into the main hall and saw a huge space. This space was filled with green seawater. At this moment, the seawater outside the space was still like a crystal, but in the center of the space, all the seawater was rotating at an extremely fast speed. This rotation seemed to have no rules. Some water flowed from the inside to the outside, some flowed from the outside to the inside, and some flowed from the outside to the inside. There were also some flowed like ribbons that wound around the surroundings, and as these flowed, a black and white brilliance shone out from the seawater. Aosu landed at the edge of the space. He glanced at the huge rotation and said in a low voice, Xiao Longshi, Senior Kuei, please wait for a moment. Wait for me to open the teleportation channel and send the two of you to Dragon Island. As he spoke, Aosu took out a golden token from the long bay. This token was in the shape of a dragon, and thumb-sized dragon patterns were engraved on it. Aosu spat out a mouthful of dragon breath onto the token, and the dragon seemed to come alive. falling towards the black and white spinning. Boom! That token fell into the spinning, and a huge roar sounded everywhere. Then Xiaohua saw countless light shadows were born from the spinning like flood dragons, and rushed into the void while hissing. After a few breaths, the void also began to tremble. Tens of thousands of heaven and earth yuan qi crashed into the spinning light shadows, and waves of ghostly wails and wolf-like strange sounds sounded. As the heaven and earth yuan qi crashed in, the entire spinning began to converge. Streaks of light shadows shuttled back and forth in the main hall like flying swords, and layers of obscure waves also spread around the main hall. Finally, with a whimper, the huge spinning disappeared, and a strange whirlpool appeared in the middle of the main hall. This whirlpool was black and white, and its shape was different from all directions. All the light shadows were torn into strange shapes inside the whirlpool, and these light shadows fell into the center of the whirlpool, forming an extremely dazzling dragon-shaped brilliance. Senior Yun Xiaolongshi, Aosu said respectfully when he saw the teleportation tunnel was completed. The teleportation tunnel to Dragon Island has been opened. Previously, when I sent a message to the elders of Dragon Palace, I only told them that Xiaolongshi was going there, and I did not mention Senior Yun. It's too late to send a message now. Therefore, if Dragon Island has neglected you in any way, please forgive us, Senior Yun. Don't worry about it. Reverend Yun waved his hand, controlling his dragon body to rush into the dragon-shaped brilliance at the center of the whirlpool. Xiaohua nodded at Aosu, then followed him into the teleportation tunnel. As soon as Reverend Yun entered the whirlpool, a powerful suction force came from the brilliance and enveloped him. When he flew in with the suction force, the brilliance expanded rapidly, and when the dragon-shaped brilliance looked similar to Reverend Yun's, the dragon-shaped brilliance was torn apart. Layers of black and white light shadows rushed into the void, forming a huge tunnel. The tunnel was filled with dragon runes, and black and white light spots reflected in it, looking like huge dragon scales. When Reverend Yun's dragon body rushed into the tunnel, his entire body was stretched and twisted, stretching towards the other end of the tunnel. Xiaohua followed Reverend Yun into the tunnel, and the same thing happened to him as well. At an unknown location at the bottom of the ocean, a dragon was glinting brightly, driving away the surrounding darkness. In front of the dragon were a dozen dragon generals, who were nervously looking at a huge space before them. There was no light in the space, but strangely, there were some unknown ripples that came and went from time to time, violently lashing at the seawater in the space. Amidst the roaring and roaring of the seawater, the entire space looked like a giant beast. Whoa! Suddenly a shrill cry rang out from the space. Even though they were in the seawater, they could still hear it very clearly. Along with the cry, one figure after another began to shoot out from the darkness like fireflies. He's coming, he's coming. The dragon at the front cried out in a low voice, waving his dragon claw and saying, "Hurry up! Dragon Master Xiao will be here soon." As the dragon cried out in a low voice, the seawater in the space suddenly began to roll and roll, forming another huge whirlpool in the blink of an eye. Numerous huge threads of light were seen twisting and flowing in the whirlpool, brightening up the seawater within several hundred miles. Rumble! A loud boom rang out from the center of the whirlpool, and it began to collapse at an incredible speed. A grayish-white mist overflowed from the void, and then a very powerful dragon pressure came seeping out from it. The group of dragons began to tremble as they looked at each other in dismay. They slowly coiled up their gigantic dragon bodies to resist the terrifying dragon might. They couldn't understand how Xiaolongshi could possess such a terrifying dragon might. Roar! An enormous dragon shadow twisted and rushed out from the whirlpool, wheeling in front of the group of dragons for a brief moment before finally condensing into a mighty dragon standing proudly amidst the seawater. No, that's not right. Reverend Yun? The group of dragons was startled, then suddenly realized who it was. When Reverend Yun retracted the dragon pressure, they scrambled to prostrate themselves on the surface of the seawater and cried out respectfully, "Greetings, Senior Yun. Get up." Reverend Yun stretched his dragon body and said with a loud voice, "You don't have to be so courteous." "Yes, Senior." The group of dragons rose to their feet respectfully. At the same time, a bright shadow flashed beside Reverend Yun. Xiaohua's slim and tall body first twisted and turned. Then he straightened up and revealed himself. Behind Xiaohua's figure, the The huge whirlpool gradually calmed down, and the light figure also gradually disappeared. But after a brief moment, the surrounding space returned to its previous tranquility. The group of dragons dared not to be negligent. They hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. "Greetings, Dragon Master Xiao." Xiao Hua answered, then raised his head and looked at Long Yan. "So, this place is not Dragon Island?" "Yes, Dragon Master Xiao." The leading dragon hastily explained, "This is the teleportation tunnel used by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to Dragon Island. It is very close to Dragon Island. Seniors, please board Long Yan. It will take you less than an hour to reach Dragon Island." "All right." Xiao Hua nodded, then gave Reverend Yun a look and said, "Let's board Long Yan. It looks like the Dragon Palace doesn't want you and me to know the location of Dragon Island." "Dragon Master Xiao, you misunderstood us." Upon hearing Xiao Hua's words, the dragon was taken aback. He quickly bowed and said, "It's not that the elders don't want seniors to know the location of Dragon Island, but if we want to enter Dragon Island, we have to rely on Long Yan. Save your explanation." Reverend Yun waved his hand and said, "You just need to open Long Yan." "Yes, Senior Yun." The dragon moved his body and led a few of the other dragons to open Long Yan, while the rest of the dragons continued to surround the calm space, keeping their guard up. As soon as Xiao Hua and Reverend Yun entered Long Yan, the Long Yan shook violently. Layers of light rose from the top of Long Yan's head, rushing toward its tail like a stream of spring water. After a few rounds of impact, the light transformed into streams of light and plunged into the boundless ocean, plunging the entire unknown space back into the darkness of the seabed. Xiao Hua's cultivation base had improved by leaps and bounds compared to when he first set foot on Dragon Island. Therefore, the dragon formation of Long Yan could no longer restrict his divine will. However, Xiao Hua only released his divine will when Long Yan was activated. After giving it a brief glance, he retracted his divine will and only talked to Reverend Yun. Reverend Yun told him everything that happened after Xiao Hua left Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. In the end, Xiao Hua waved his hand and sealed the surrounding space. "Fellow Taoist, I have bad news." After that, Xiao Hua told Reverend Yun about the 4 continents and said with a wry smile, "Things have greatly exceeded my expectations. The 3 continents do not have any passageways that lead to other realms, and there is an immortal realm array separating the 4 continents. If we want to kill Mayfly, we have to destroy this immortal realm array." Fellow Taoist, you don't have to say anything." Reverend Yun smiled and answered, "Fellow Taoist, you can make the decision on this matter. When you need me, just let me know. I think even if it is an immortal realm array, I can still break it with my Pengu axe." Chapter 4701. Fellow Taoist, you're being too optimistic. Xiao Hua shook his head helplessly and explained, "When I found out about the immortal formation, the first thing I thought of was your Pengu axe. But now there are 2 difficulties. First, we don't know where the immortal formation is. It's too advanced. Even people as powerful as the Golden-Winged Roc and the Virokana revered sage think the West Ocean is the edge of the world. How can we find it? Second, even if we do find the immortal formation, do you think your strength is stronger than Senior Suji and Fairy Xingyu?" "No." Reverend Yun shook his head without hesitation. "Moreover, fellow Taoists should also understand that the same magic treasure in the hands of different cultivators will have different effects. Although you have mastered the Pengu axe, you only have the power to strike once. It's far from being able to split the immortal formation." Reverend Yun frowned and said with a wry smile, "Fellow Taoist, you don't seem to have any confidence." "Fellow Taoist, you're right." Xiao Hua said honestly, "I'm in a mess now and I don't know what to do. I'm like an ant on a hot pan. Oh, I'm stronger than an ant, because I know I'm on a hot pan. And I'm trying my best to find a way out. A way seems to be hard to find." Reverend Yun said thoughtfully, "Because the nests of ants like Thunder Temple, Immortal Palace, Dragon Island, and Great Sage Temple are all on this hot pan. They never know that they're on a hot pan. You can think of it this way." Xiao Hua explained. "The 4 continents are separated by an immortal formation. This is an ancient secret. It seems that the immortal realm doesn't want the cultivators of the 4 continents to know about it. Even someone as powerful as Fairy Xingyu doesn't dare to tell Suji. However, under such a taboo situation, Fairy Xing Yu was able to leave behind a clue. Therefore, I don't believe that the Buddhist sect, Confucian cultivators, Dragon Clan, and Demon Clan won't have some clues about their places of inheritance. Even if there are some clues, if there's no way to break the formation, it's useless. Reverend Yun shook his head. Just as fellow Taoist has said, this is an immortal formation. Even Goddess Xing Yu has asked you to give up. So I'm afraid you're not strong enough to do it. Before Reverend Yun could finish his words, Xiao Hua said resolutely, where there is a will, there is a way. If it was an ordinary matter, I could slack off. However, this was the 3 rivers and 4 seas. It was the life and death of billions of creatures in the 3 continents. I dare not be negligent. Reverend Yu nodded at Xiao Hua's righteous words and said, since fellow Taoist has such an idea, I'll support it. The worst-case scenario was to fight the world-destroying ephemera to the death in the 3 continents. Others might not be able to survive, but do you think our Fortune Gates disciples, won't they have a way to survive? That is our final plan. Xiao Hua laughed. A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. How can our Fortune Gates disciples not have a way out? At worst, we can send our Fortune Gates disciples and Shao country's people to the Shanhua continent. Then, I will cultivate in seclusion and ascend, leaving this place filled with ephemera. Fellow Taoist, don't be careless. Reverend Yun suddenly tensed up and reminded, let's not talk about whether the changes in the laws of heaven and earth will affect the Shanhua continent when you ascend. However, don't forget that the souls killed by the world-destroying ephemera cannot fall into the cycle of reincarnation. This has changed the laws of the 3 continents. When the time comes, even if you cultivate to the ascension realm, due to the changes in the laws of heaven and earth, you will not be able to ascend to the immortal world. Hiss. Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air, and the expression on his face changed slightly. He had not thought of this. He had been secretly delighted, thinking that he had an extra way out compared to others. In the end, if he could not resist the world-destroying ephemera, he would bring a group of disciples and as many humans as possible to ascend to the immortal world. He had not thought about the changes in the laws of heaven and earth. When Reverend Yun mentioned this, Xiao Hua immediately understood. Just like what the 7-colored divine seashell had said, the world-destroying ephemera came from the upper realm. 1 or 2 of them were not a big deal. It was like a pond with 1 or 2 extra stones. No one knew what would happen, but the number of world-destroying ephemera was terrifying. If there were millions of stones in the pond, would the entire pond still be a pond? Without water, the pond would turn into a mountain. And the 3 continents occupied by the world-destroying ephemera, what would they become? The void was blocked, and the natural energy and righteous energy were devoured. How could there be a passage to ascend? A dead end, an absolute dead end. Even if they ascended, they would not be able to get out of this dead end. Xiao Hua's heart turned cold as he forcefully retorted, fellow Taoist Xiao, don't forget that during the Star Moon Palace's lecture, there were existences who clearly stated that souls are actually a type of power. The souls that the world destruction Mayfly devoured should have had their reincarnation power devoured, which is why. While he was speaking, Xiao Hua's expression flickered. He raised his hand and removed the restrictive spell. Then he saw a dragon flying towards them from a distance. When he saw Xiao Hua and Reverend Yun, he bowed and said, Seniors, Dragon Island is in sight. We can enter it in half the time it takes to finish a pot of tea. Good. Xiao Hua put away his wild thoughts and nodded. Lead the way. Seniors, please, said the dragon respectfully as he led Xiao Hua and Reverend Yun to the exit of Dragon Island. Rumble. Dragon Island trembled slightly and stopped. Xiao Hua and Reverend Yun flew out of Dragon Island. The 9 elders of Dragon Palace had been waiting for them in front of Dragon Island. When they saw Xiao Hua and Reverend Yun, Great Elder Aojia swung his dragon tail and flew to Reverend Yun, bowing and saying, Greetings, Lord Divine Dragon. Greetings, Lord Divine Dragon. Aoe and the other 8 elders did not dare to show any neglect. Although Reverend Yun did not unleash his dragon power, the innate pressure was still emanating from his dragon body. The other 8 elders did not seem to feel any discomfort except for Aojia, whose dragon body was trembling slightly. His dragon horn was glinting faintly as it kept washing his head and other parts of his body. When Xiao Hua saw that, he understood that Aojia had suffered a serious injury, when he self-detonated a thread of his nascent divinity in the folded Emerald Legacy realm. 200 to 300 years was not enough for him to fully recover. Therefore, he quickly gave Reverend Yun a look and gave him a signal with his eyes. Reverend Yun understood. After waving his dragon claws and bowing to the 9 elders, his body flashed with a golden light as he transformed back into his human form. Using the mystic technique of Qingqiu Mountain, he hid the high-grade dragon power into his body. Aojia and the other sect elders were greatly shocked when they saw Reverend Yun could control his dragon aura with ease. They knew very well that this dragon aura was innate, and was different from the pressure exerted by human cultivators. It was not something that any dragon could control freely. The 9 elders could not help but exchange a glance with each other. Some of the ideas they had discussed before had changed slightly. Get up. You don't have to call me Lord Divine Dragon. Reverend Yun waved his hand and said, It's better to call me Reverend Yun. Well, although Aojia was delighted, he showed a hesitant expression. After a while he nodded and said, All right, no matter what you call me. Reverend Yun is the 5-clawed Divine Dragon of Dragon Island. This is an undeniable fact. After that, he turned to Xiaohua and said, Welcome, Dragon Teacher Xiao, to Dragon Island. Grand Elder. Xiaohua smiled, stepped forward and bowed to Aojia. It's been a long time. How is Grand Elder's body? Without the oppressive dragon power, Aojia's dragon body no longer trembled. He looked no different from an ordinary dragon. Aojia answered with a smile, Thanks to Dragon Teacher Xiao. My body is in great condition. And to tell you the truth, I've profited from a disaster. Ha ha ha. At this point Aojia stopped talking. Xiaohua understood what he meant, and with a big smile on his face he said, Congratulations, Grand Elder. I've been cultivating for so many years, and there's nothing to be happy about. Instead, I should congratulate Dragon Teacher Xiao and Reverend Yun. Although Aojia was also grinning from ear to ear, he still said with emotion, It's only been 300 years, but the 2 of you have gone from unknown cultivators to supreme cultivators of our 3 continents in one fell swoop. This is definitely an unparalleled miracle in the records of the human and dragon races. It was no wonder that Aojia was so moved. The last time Xiaohua came to Dragon Island, he was only at the 4th or 5th grade of elemental energy. He only came to Dragon Island as a descendant of the dragon bloodline to accompany him for training. In the eyes of Aojia and the other elders, Xiaohua was only a chess piece with value. And now, Xiaohua had stepped foot on Dragon Island again, and he was already the supreme cultivator of a sect. He could even be said to be the strongest person in the 3 continents. None of the 9 elders of Dragon Palace dared to neglect him, and they all came to welcome him. Who would still dare to treat him as a chess piece? And Xiaohua's magnificent transformation had only taken a mere 300 years. It had been 300 years. Aojia hadn't even recovered from his previous injury. There's a saying in Dao sect, everyone has their own fate, and others can't force it. Xiaohua smiled and didn't say much. This old man greets Dragon Master Xiao. Second Elder Aoe stepped forward with a smile and bowed. Is there any urgent matter for Dragon Master Xiao to come to Dragon Island? You and I have just met at the Jade Lake Assembly. This old man had just reported the result of the Jade Lake Assembly to the Grand Elder, and the 9 elders of Dragon Palace had just finished discussing the matter and passed the decision of Dragon Island to the various dragon clans. Today, I suddenly received news that Dragon Master Xiao is coming. This old man is really surprised. 4th Elder Aoding also flew over and said with a smile, That's right, Dragon Master Xiao. When we received the message from the West Sea Dragon Palace, we only knew that Dragon Master Xiao was coming, but we didn't expect that Reverend Yun would also come. This really caught us off guard. Grand Elder Aojia was even more calm. He looked at Reverend Yun and asked, Could it be that Reverend Yun doesn't want to be the Fortune Gate's old master and wants to come to Dragon Palace? If so, this old man welcomes you. This old man is willing to give up the position of Grand Elder. Chapter 4702. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw these old dragons who were even more cunning than foxes trying to force him to declare his stance. He hastily waved his hand and said, Elders, you're overthinking. Today Xiaohua was startled when he saw the faint smile on Aojia's face. He suddenly understood that Ao Jiao wasn't forcing him to declare his stance, but Ao Jiao was worried that he was here to cause trouble for Dragon Island. Previously, when he was only a 5th-grade Yuan-Qi expert, Ao Jia and the other elders of Dragon Island used him as a chess piece to deal with the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas, and even Ao Zhan. Now that he had transcended from the chessboard, Ao Jia was afraid that he would bring up old scores, so he brought up Reverend Yun the moment they met. Firstly, it was to divert attention, and secondly, it was to express his stance. He even reminded Xiao Hua that Reverend Yun was here because of Dragon Island. Damn it! Xiao Hua cursed inwardly. These dragons are too cunning. I can't scheme against them. Although he had figured it out, Xiao Hua decided to play dumb. He continued, I'm here today for the world-destroying ephemera. It has nothing to do with Dragon Island's affairs. Of course, if Great Elder thinks of something, please remind I would be happy to ask Great Elder for advice. World-destroying ephemera? Ao Jia was so cunning that he directly ignored the meaning of Xiao Hua's words. He asked in astonishment, is it that strange insect? That's right. Xiao Hua didn't want to beat around the bush with these old loaches who had lived for God knows how many years. He went straight to the point. I've received some information and know that this matter is different from the discussion at the Nacre Lake. This matter is more troublesome, so I came to Dragon Island in a hurry. After all, I'm the Dragon Master of Dragon Island. I want to discuss this matter with the elders first, then decide how to explain it to the Immortal Palace, Thunder Temple, and Great Sage Hall. Dragon Teacher Xiao came to my Dragon Island first. It's not out of my expectations. The second elder Aoe laughed loudly. Dragon Teacher Xiao, when you set up the West Ocean in the future, my Dragon Island will definitely help you. Old Gauchen will definitely regret banishing the Fortune Gate from Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and said, Second elder doesn't seem to understand the weight of the words world-exterminating mayfly. If this Xiao's guess is correct, then it would be strange if the insect disaster couldn't be avoided. The 3 rivers and 4 seas, the 3 continents. Among the billions of creatures, there wouldn't be a single perhaps. Sigh, forget it, let's talk inside the Dragon Palace. How? Aoe was dumbfounded. Just as Xiao Hua had said, the dragon race had always been a high and mighty existence in the 3 continents. Not to mention that ordinary dragons did not bother to interact with other humans. Even the dragon race had split off from the demon race. Dragon Island was a holy land that existed at the same time as the Great Holy Temple. Of course, at the Jade Pool meeting, the mayfly's strange insects had shown incomparable strangeness. However, Aoe and the other dragons did not raise the level of destruction to the level of true destruction. They only thought that it was a serious disaster. Since Xiao Hua had spoken in such a serious manner, the hearts of all 9 elders of the Dragon Palace thumped at the same time. Ao Jia dared not to be negligent, and immediately invited Xiao Hua and Reverend Yun to the Dragon Palace. Since one was the Dragon Master of the Dragon Island, and the other was the Patriarch of the 11th clan of the Dragon Island, existences that were even higher than the dragon race of the 3 continents, the Dragon Palace did not have any illusions. There were only 10 dragon pillars standing erect in the Dragon Palace. Reverend Yun, please get on the dragon pillar. When all the elders of the dragon race entered the Dragon Palace, Ao Jia was the first to ask Reverend Yun to sit on the dragon pillar. Reverend Yun smiled and shook his head. I still want to live a carefree life in the Fortune Gate. Why would I sit on the dragon pillar for no reason? That is your position, and also Ao Zhan's position. When second elder Aoe heard that, his expression changed slightly. After all, Ao Zhan's matter had taken shape, but it had not reached the stage where he could be promoted to Patriarch and sit in the Dragon Palace. But when Grand Elder Ao Jia heard that, he immediately clapped his hands and said, So, Reverend Yun also has the same idea. What a coincidence. Elders, what do you think? Of course, 4th Elder Ao Ding also clapped his hands and said, What Grand Elder said is right. Ao Zhan had shown great potential during the Stacking Emerald Legacy Realms trial. This old man also thinks that this matter is feasible. The second elder Aoe could not take it anymore. He retorted, Great Elder, the Gue clan's rebellion has a serious impact. Although the Dragon Island has already issued an order to correct it, many things can't be resolved with just a few words. If we act too hastily, we might end up making a fool of ourselves. Moreover, Ao Zhan's strength is too weak. How can he sit on the dragon pillar? What do you think, Dragon Master Xiao? Ao Jia did not answer. Instead, he turned his head and asked Xiao Hua. Reverend Yun's words were spoken under Xiao Hua's instructions. When he heard Ao Jia's question, Xiao Hua put on an act and said, Grand Elder, this is your Dragon Island's internal affairs. How can I interfere without permission? Dragon Master Xiao is wrong. Ao Jia smiled and said, since you are the Dragon Master of our Dragon Island, you naturally have the right to speak. Otherwise, wouldn't the title of Dragon Master become a joke? Besides, Ao Zhan and Dragon Master Xiao are closely related, and some of his opportunities were created by Dragon Master Xiao. If Dragon Master Xiao is not qualified to speak, then who in the entire Dragon Clan is qualified to evaluate Ao Zhan? Xiao Hua nodded and answered, if so, I'll tell you my opinion. In my opinion, Ao Zhan is the descendant of the Hui clan's patriarch, and he deserves to be the patriarch. Besides, the Dragon Island originally had 10 clans. Now that one clan is missing, it is not perfect. The Hui clan should return to the Dragon Island. Of course, what second elder said is true. Ao Zhan's cultivation base is too weak, and he can't even be compared with Ao Shang. How can he sit on the dragon pillar? Therefore, we might as well give him the title of second elder or prospective elder, so that he can have the motivation to cultivate. Dragon Master Xiao. Second elder Aoe still frowned and said, even the second elder of our dragon palace has to be at the edge of the 9th tier of origin energy. With Ao Zhan's strength, it is not enough. Then we'll settle for the next best thing. Xiao Hua suggested, give Ao Zhan an empty position and let him strengthen his cultivation. When his strength reaches the 8th tier of origin energy, he can enter the dragon palace as a second elder. When he reaches the 9th tier, he can enter the dragon palace as the 10th elder. Dragon Master Xiao, you're being too childish. Aoe said unhappily. How can the dragon palace give him an empty position? Besides, how can we make a promise to enter the dragon palace as the 10th elder now? Second elder. Ao Jia suddenly faced Aoe and said, now the West Ocean Dragon Palace is weak. If we kill the mayflies and cause trouble in the West Ocean, I'm afraid it will affect the dragon race of the 4 seas. Why don't we let Ao Zhan be the commander of the 4 seas, and let him lead the dragon race of the Hui race to conquer the 4 seas and kill the strange insects? This, Aoe heard and hesitated. Perfected Yun said, I think it's suitable. Since the mayfly is in front of us, and we want the Hui clan and Dragon clan to work for us, how can we not give them some benefits? Alright, it's settled then. Ao Jia did not allow Aoe to object any further. He said, Master Xiao, I've heard from the second elder about the power of the world-destroying strange insect. To be honest, such low-level insects have always had unimaginable mystical abilities after mutation. However, the mystical abilities after mutation are usually very weak. Since Master Xiao can casually kill the strange insect king that exceeds the 10th grade of essence power with spirit pills from other realms, with the vastness of the 4 seas, there must be similar spiritual herbs and other items that can replace it. Elders, please take a seat. Xiao Hua knew that Ao Jia and the others had underestimated the power of the mayfly. He sighed and said, allow me to explain in detail. Ao Jia and the other 9 patriarchs sat cross-legged on the 9 dragon pillars, while Xiao Hua and Reverend Yun sat cross-legged in the center of the palace. After that, Xiao Hua told them everything he knew, including the Dawn Rain continent, the immortal formation, and the origin of the world-destroying ephemera. The expressions of Ao Jia, Aoe, and the other elders of Dragon Island changed as expected. Finally, Xiao Hua's gaze swept across the 9 elders, starting from Ao Jia, and said, now is the critical moment of life and death for the billions of lives in the 3 continents, 3 rivers and 4 seas. This is not an alarmist talk. If we can't find a way to break the array, connect the 4 continents, and let the heterogeneous energy from the Dawn Rain continent come here, even if we stand to the last man, demon or dragon, we will never be able to destroy the mayfly. Everyone, put away your previous contempt and neglect and think carefully. Is there any record of the immortal array, the 4 continents, and the method to break the array in this dragon palace? Xiao Hua's words were powerful and resonant. After he spoke, the calm dragon palace was dead silent. Not even waves dared to be stirred up. For the time it took to finish a meal, not a single dragon clan member spoke. It was unknown whether the elders were discussing through voice transmission, or if they were pondering on their own. Xiaohua was also not in a hurry. When he was talking to the elders of Dragon Island, he had also organized his thoughts. The three innate divine restrictions he passed were the Taoist array, the demon array, and the Buddhist array. There was no origin array of the Confucian cultivators or the dragon array of the dragon clan. Therefore, the Immortal Palace and Dragon Island might not have records of this. His focus should be on the Great Sage Hall and Thunder Temple. Sure enough, after another incense stick's worth of time, Aojia opened his mouth and said, "Dragon Master Xiao, what you said is too outrageous. Not to mention that the mayfly has such a great origin, just this immortal array. This old man, no, my entire Dragon Island has never had records of this." The power of the mayfly, second elder saw it with his own eyes. Ao Shang also saw it with his own eyes. That day in the stacked Emerald Legacy realm, a mayfly that was no more than a few zhang long was able to wantonly slaughter numerous dragons. What if 100 zhang or 1,000 zhang long mayflies surrounded the Dragon Island in groups? Xiaohua indifferently explained. Therefore, Great Elder, don't be careless. Only the worst-case scenario can happen. There is no such thing as the worst-case scenario. Chapter 4703. Yes, I also know about the world-exterminating ephemera. Aojia replied. Furthermore, after second elder brought Xiao Longshi's message back, my Dragon Island has already checked the ancient records of dragon strategies and dragon laws. Unfortunately, just as Xiao Longshi said, my Dragon Island has no records of the realm passageway, much less the records of the so-called immortal formation. Therefore I am somewhat suspicious of Xiao Longshi's words. The existence of the immortal formation is also unquestionable. Xiaohua smiled. This Xiao came to the three continents from Dawn Rain continent through that immortal formation. However, the passageway this Xiao passed through was simply too coincidental. This passageway is definitely not a good place. This Xiao cannot guarantee that I will be able to find it again, nor can I guarantee that I will be able to pass through it safely. In particular, within that passageway, the great formation is as vast as the heavens. How can this Xiao break the formation? I can only find the location of the formation's core, the flaw, and then I can truly break the formation. No. Aojia waved his hand and said, Xiao Longshi misunderstood my meaning. Although what you said is inconceivable, this old man feels that it is extremely possible. In the West Sea, there might be something strange about it. There are some records of this in my dragon strategies. There are even some dragons on my Dragon Island who mysteriously disappeared in the West Ocean. This old man is only saying that my Dragon Island does not have any records of the immortal formation, nor do we know of the existence of the four great continents. First Elder. Xiaohua nodded, but he still asked unwillingly, "Are you sure that you have seen all the dragon strategies and dragon laws in the Dragon Palace?" "That's right. This old man can guarantee it." First Elder Aojia replied solemnly, "For the past few hundred years, this old man has been concentrating on comprehending the secret techniques of the dragon race. I have flipped through many dragon strategies. Firstly, I was looking for information about the Ho race. Secondly, I was looking for the dragon worship and the origin of the strange insects." First Elder. Second Elder Aoi suddenly said, "Even if the dragon race has explored the entire Dragon Island, they have not seen the true Dragon Palace, right?" "Ayo, that's right." When Aojia heard this, he suddenly came to a realization and cried out, "I'm afraid that in the entire Dragon Island, only the true Dragon Palace has not been seen. Maybe there are some secrets inside at this time." Fourth Elder frowned and said, "But the true Dragon Palace is a place that we can't enter. For so many years, there has never been a dragon who could enter." Fourth Elder is wrong. Ninth Elder, who had been silent all this while, said with a smile, "Perhaps no dragon could enter the true Dragon Palace in the past, but Reverend Yun is here today. He has the bloodline of the 11th clan of the Dragon Island. He will definitely be able to enter." Damn it! This group of old dragons. When Xiaohua heard the Ninth Elder's words, How could he not know that he had fallen into the trap of these 9 elders who were even more cunning than old foxes? Damn it! I remember when we were in the Dragon Palace, Aojia had been trying to find out Reverend Yun's background, as if he wanted to do something with Reverend Yun's background. At that time, I could use the excuse that Reverend Yun's dragon body had yet to solidify, but I'm afraid I can't do that today. No matter how I think about it, I still fell into the trap of this old dragon. Xiaohua thought to himself and was about to say something. However, 6th elder spoke again. 9th elder is also wrong. In addition to the bloodline of the 11th clan, the true Dragon Palace also needs the Dragon Jade as a token. Alright. Xiaohua finally understood. Today, when he came to Dragon Island, not only would he not be able to find out any information about the immortal formation, but he would also have to keep the Dragon Jade. Damn it! Is this the legendary saying of going for wool but coming home shorn? However, when he thought of all the benefits he had obtained from Dragon Island, not to mention the fact that Reverend Yun had completely comprehended the heavenly dragon language technique in the Dragon Jade during the several tens of thousands of years he spent in the heavenly prison, Xiaohua felt it was time for him to return the Dragon Jade to Dragon Island. So Xiaohua looked at Aojia, nodded and said, if what you said is true, why don't I invite Reverend Yun to the true Dragon Palace with the Dragon Jade? Seeing that Xiaohua, who had always been stingy, was so generous today and did not discuss any conditions at all, Aojia and Aoi were a little worried. They were all surprised and looked at each other. Aoi even whispered, Xiao, Dragon Master Xiao, is what you said true? Of course it's true. Xiaohua looked at these narrow-minded dragon elders with disdain, and said with a smile, but, phew. When Aojia and Aoi heard the word but, they instantly heaved a long sigh of relief. They finally felt relieved because they knew that although Xiaohua was calculative, as long as he could agree to his conditions, he would definitely agree to them. Dragon Master Xiao, please speak. Aoi asked happily. Listening to that voice, he felt that it would be very fun. Let Aojan be the 10th elder of Dragon Island. Xiaohua said with a smile. Dragon Master Xiao, you are asking for too much. That's impossible. Aoyi's answer was extremely smooth. He did not hesitate at all. After he finished speaking, he explained, we have already discussed this matter previously. There's no need to discuss it anymore. What about Long Yu and another dragon who can enter the true Dragon Palace? Xiaohua's smile was comparable to that of an old fox. Aoyi's heart skipped a beat. His dragon body almost slipped off the dragon pillar. He cried out in disbelief, Dragon Master Xiao, are you talking about Ao Shang? That's impossible, right? Ao Jiao was trembling with joy as he roared loudly. After all, Aoi had already seen Ao Shang at the Jade Pool. Although Ao Shang had the shadow of the dragon god around him, and was obviously trying his best to absorb the essence of the dragon god's dragon core, the strength that Ao Shang displayed was still shallow. When Aoi returned to the Dragon Palace, he also described it truthfully. The elders were overjoyed, but they never thought that Ao Shang would be qualified to enter the true Dragon Palace. I'm not sure. Xiaohua avoided the topic. I only know that Ao Zhan is qualified to be the 10th elder of the Dragon Palace in the future. Cough cough. Ojia coughed, withdrew his surprise and said seriously, Dragon Master Xiao, I know what you're thinking. Whether it's Ao Zhan, Ao Shang or Xiao Bai, everything has to be done step by step. Don't you humans have a saying that goes, you can't be fat with just one bite? Previously, Second Elder and I have already discussed it. After the apocalyptic war, as long as Ao Zhan has military merits and his strength can meet the requirements, he will definitely be able to take on the responsibility of being the 10th elder of the Dragon Palace. Hearing Ao Jia mention Xiao Bai's name, Xiaohua understood that this cunning old dragon knew everything. This was the only thing that he could force. Therefore, Xiaohua smiled and said, since Grand Elder has spoken, let's do it. After that, Xiaohua turned and asked, fellow Taoist Yun, are you willing to make a trip to the true Dragon Palace? I don't mind. With a fearless face, Reverend Yun answered without hesitation, it is my pleasure to do something for the Dragon Clan. Good. Ao Jia and the other 8 elders clapped. With this praise, the matter that the Dragon Palace Master and Xiaohua had discussed earlier was settled. Let's go to the true Dragon Palace. Seeing that there was still a virgin palace in the dragon palace, Xiaohua urged anxiously. Jia looked at Aoi and said with a smile, Second Elder, please arrange this matter. I will accompany Dragon Master Xiao and will be there soon. All right. Second Elder Aoi knew that Jia had something to say to Xiaohua, so he nodded and said to the other elders, the opening of the true dragon palace is no small matter. Everyone, please come and help. After the other 8 elders flew out of the dragon palace, Jia first raised his dragon claw and bowed. Thank you, Dragon Master Xiao. Xiaohua knew that Jia was talking about the dragon cleansing liquid. He smiled and returned the bow. This is Shang's filial piety. I'm just fulfilling his filial piety. Ah yes. Jia sighed. There are not many dragons who are as filial as Shang in the dragon race. This is also one of the reasons why I favor him so much. Hearing this, Xiaohua glanced at Jia and asked thoughtfully, since he is such a good dragon, why are you willing to let him go to the Thousand Demons' sacred realm to save me? Jia smiled like a fox and said, in this child's heart, you are Dragon Master. Since he is determined to save you, how can I stop him? Since he wants to go, why don't we let the test give him some pressure? I think this will be beneficial for his growth. However, I really didn't expect that. Dragon Master Xiao is indeed Dragon Master Xiao. The moment he stepped out of Dragon Island, he laughed proudly in the 9 heavens and played the human race, the demon race, and the dragon race in the palm of his hand. In just a few hundred years, Dragon Master Xiao has already become the most powerful person in the world. Even I can't compare to him. Flattery shouldn't come from Grand Elder's mouth. Xiaohua chuckled and said, moreover, Grand Elder didn't ask me to stay just for this matter, right? Yes, I want to talk to Dragon Master Xiao about 3 things in private. Jia sent a voice transmission mysteriously. Xiaohua was stunned and sent a voice transmission as well. There are actually 3 things? I thought there was only 1. Of course, what Dragon Master Xiao is concerned about is also what I want to talk to Dragon Master Xiao about first. Jia replied with a smile. The few dragons that Dragon Master Xiao sent over earlier, although their memories have been erased and there are no records in Long Su, I already know a little about them after using the Heavenly Dragon Speech technique. Grand Elder. Hearing this, Xiaohua suddenly understood and hurriedly asked, you haven't recovered from your injuries, how can you still use the Heavenly Dragon Speech technique? There is always a priority for things. I have received such a great favor from Dragon Master Xiao, so I have to repay it. Jia smiled and replied casually. Chapter 4704. Although Jia's words sounded like he was trying to curry favor with Xiaohua, in Xiaohua's ears, there was a different feeling in his heart. In fact, sometimes some people didn't want to scheme deliberately but because they had no choice but to scheme. In the situation they were facing, there were too many things they had to consider. If they didn't scheme, they wouldn't be able to balance all aspects and obtain greater benefits, so they had no choice but to scheme. Scheming was always exhausting and many times it was strenuous and unrewarding. However, if this person's nature wasn't sinister to the extreme, then he would always throw away his mask of hypocrisy in some unintentional details. The human race was like this, the dragon race was like this, and Jia was like this. This Xiao also thanks Great Elder. Xiaohua knew that many words of thanks didn't need to be said. As long as they understood each other's hearts, it was enough, so he only said a word of thanks. Jia didn't mention this matter again, but said solemnly, according to this old man's Heavenly Dragon Speech technique, these dragons might have come from the Thousand Demons' Sacred Realm's Great Holy Palace. Of course, this Heavenly Dragon Speech technique is similar to the Taoist divination technique, so it might not be true. Whenever a dragon appears, could it be from Dragon Island or the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas? It should be from the Thousand Demons' Sacred Realm, right? Xiaohua replied indifferently, moreover, these dragons appeared in the Thousand Demons' Sacred Realm, so the possibility of that dragon sage is also very high. Why would he make it so obvious without any reason? The human race is all like this. They think they're smart, that others wouldn't do something so obvious, and that there might be something even more secretive. Jia said indifferently, perhaps he wants to use this idea to make you suspect him first, then dispel his suspicions. And this Xiao understands. Xiaohua nodded slightly, declining to comment. Aojia smiled bitterly. After all, this matter involves some disputes with the dragon race. If he said it now, it would be hard to avoid suspicion from other aspects, but he couldn't not say it. Then Aojia said, as for the second matter, Xiao Longshire has already mentioned it. Our dragon race controls some of the transportation channels between the four seas. Xiao Longshire has also used this transportation channel before, and it's somewhat similar to the Taoist teleportation formation. These channels have been somewhat abnormal recently, and it should be related to the world-destroying mayfly. At the same time, our Dragon Island also has some abandoned transportation channels. No one knows where these channels lead to, but they might lead to outside of the realm. It could also lead to the 3 continents, or even the Daybreak continent. Xiao Hua's heart shook as he transmitted his voice. Can these teleportation channels be repaired? No. Aojia shook his head and said. Not to mention that the method of building the dimensional portal has been lost. Those dimensional portals have long become ruins. There is no dragon chi produced, so it is impossible to repair them. Moreover, just like what Xiao Longshire said, I have never heard of any spatial passageway in the 4 seas. That could lead to the outside world. To deal with the insectoids, does Great Elder have any suggestions? Xiao Hua couldn't help but ask again. Aojia was silent for a moment. He shook his head slightly and did not say much. Then what about the third matter that Great Elder spoke of? Xiao Hua was a bit curious as to what else the Great Elder had to say to him. The third thing. Aojia gave Reverend Yun a look, then turned to Xiao Hua and said seriously, is related to His Excellency Sacred Dragon and Dragon Mentor Xiao. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Reverend Yun, then at Aojia, and asked curiously, Great Elder, can you tell me more? When Dragon Mentor Xiao came to the Dragon Island for a trial, he had been to the Dragon Chi realm, and I've seen the images there. Don't tell me that His Excellency Sacred Dragon has nothing to do with Dragon Mentor Xiao. Haha. Xiao Hua laughed, nodded and said, I knew Great Elder would have this suspicion. Have you always thought that Reverend Yun is just a clone of mine? Aojia smiled and answered, that's what Dragon Mentor Xiao said himself. I didn't say anything. Xiao Hua explained, it's no wonder Great Elder has such a suspicion. In fact, when we were in the sacred realm of 1,000 demons, Golden-Winged Great Rock also had the same suspicion. However, Reverend Yun's overall strength is much stronger than mine, and I'm a genuine human while Reverend Yun is a genuine dragon. That's why his suspicion was dispelled. It's not strange for a human to have a dragon clone, and it's not strange for a dragon to have a human clone. However, if this is Dragon Mentor Xiao's true form, it's impossible for His Excellency Sacred Dragon to have such a high overall strength. And if this is His Excellency Sacred Dragon's true form, Dragon Mentor Xiao's overall strength is also ridiculously high. Aojia frowned and said, this is what puzzles me and all the other elders. Great Elder, you don't have to be puzzled anymore. Xiao Hua smiled and said, I didn't say it earlier because I was afraid that the Dragon Island would covet it. But now, we're one family, so I might as well tell Great Elder everything. Reverend Yun is the same as Xiao Bai. Both of them are dragon souls I encountered by chance. They coexist with my soul and my body, and it was during the trial in the stacked Emerald Legacy realm that both dragon souls could truly form their bodies. Because they have coexisted with my soul, it's not easy to separate them. That's why Xiao Bai was mistaken as me in the sacred realm of 1,000 demons. Coexisting with soul. Oh, I get it now. Aojia nodded and said, this is the only way to explain why Dragon Mentor Xiao has a dragon aura. He can also reveal his dragon bloodline in the Dragon Chi realm. Great Elder, you know everything about me. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and said, Great Elder, you're really amazing. The truth is like a fire in a paper. It can never be hidden. Aojia smiled and said, sometimes, it's good for you to reveal the truth appropriately, and not let others think too much. At this point, Aojia flew up from the dragon pillar and said, let's go. The true dragon palace should be ready now. I'd like to invite Reverend Yun in to take a look. Xiao Hua and Reverend Yun followed Aojia to the front of the true dragon palace. Xiao Hua was stunned because the true dragon palace was too shabby. Although it didn't look shabby, it was far from the grandeur of the other palaces. It was like a small gatehouse of a big family of the human race. There wasn't even a plaque in the palace. At this moment, The 8 elders of the Dragon Island were already waiting in front of the true dragon palace. However, they didn't approach the palace but stayed far away in the sea. Seeing Xiaohua and Reverend Yun flying toward them, Aoi greeted them with a smile and said, "Reverend Yun, Dragon Mentor Xiao, the true dragon palace is ready. You can enter at any time." "Good." Xiaohua raised his hand and took out the Kunlun mirror. Amidst the vibrating light, the mirror sent out the sleeping Ao Sheng. As soon as Ao Sheng came out, the huge shadow of the dragon god rushed out. Boom! 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 As soon as the shadow of the dragon god appeared, the entire dragon island reacted. Countless dragon auras and dragon breaths rushed up like 10,000 dragons prostrating themselves before them. The layers of dragon formations also emerged and rippled in the sea where the dragon island was located. Roar! What was special was that a strange dragon roar suddenly came out from the pitch-black true dragon palace. After that, tiny whirlpools began to appear in the sea around the true dragon palace. As expected, seeing the reaction of the true dragon palace, Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and thought coldly to himself, Zhonglua reincarnated on the Dawn Rain continent, and Ao Sheng reincarnated on the Dragon Island. This is definitely not a coincidence. These 4 continents are definitely not simple. Otherwise, the so-called immortal realm would not have spent so much effort to separate the 4 continents. And this true dragon palace might really be the secret move of the dragon god. However, with fellow Taoist Yun accompanying Ao Sheng today, even if the dragon god has some tricks up his sleeve, he won't be able to escape from his hands. The dragon roar of the true dragon palace rang out, and Ao Sheng suddenly woke up from his deep sleep. He looked around in bewilderment and suddenly said with joy, "Grand Elder? Am I back? Am I still dreaming?" "No," Ao Jia said kindly, "Dragon Master Xiao has sent you back. Now, I want you to accompany Reverend Yun to the True Dragon Palace." "The True Dragon Palace?" Ao Sheng glanced at the palace and asked curiously, "How can I enter the True Dragon Palace?" "But..." Speaking of this, Ao Sheng muttered strangely, "But I still hear a dragon calling me from inside." "Fellow Taoist Xiao." Reverend Yun's voice also sounded in Xiaohua's mind. "I also feel that there is a summoning from inside." "Yes, you have experienced the incident in the ruins. It must be related to the dragon god. You should go and take a look." Xiaohua replied in his mind, "No matter what, you must act according to the situation. If you can't handle it, just ask I directly. Of course, you must also protect Ao Sheng." "All right," Reverend Yun answered in his mind, then opened his mouth and spat out the dragon jade. "How do I use this dragon jade?" Cough. 6th elder coughed and said awkwardly, "Just give it to the Grand Elder." "He." Xiaohua said sarcastically, "So the token of the true dragon palace on Dragon Island can be used in this way. This is the first time I've heard of it. So Ao Sheng, a little clan elder of the dragon clan, also has something that can replace the bloodline of the 11th clan?" He. Ao Jia was still the thick-skinned one. His expression did not change at all as he answered, "Everything is possible. Well, just pretend that I didn't say anything." Xiaohua was completely convinced by the cunning and shamelessness of the dragon clan. He waved his hand helplessly and said, "Let's go." Reverend Yun waved his hand and sent the dragon jade to the Grand Elder, while he himself rushed into the true dragon palace. The group of elders stared at Reverend Yun. When they saw Reverend Yun's dragon body rushing into the palace, a complicated expression appeared in their eyes. Although Ao Sheng was a little sleepy, he was now full of energy. He wanted to follow Reverend Yun into the true dragon palace, but unfortunately, when his body touched the palace, an inexplicable dragon rune mixed with complicated energy waves blocked his way, preventing him from entering. But strangely, the dragon shadow around Ao Sheng's body, which was still swaying, disappeared into the palace without being blocked. Chapter 4705. Why can't I go in? Ao Sheng cried out in bewilderment. Ao Jia was taken aback as well. He hurriedly moved his body, trying to get closer. However, before he could do so, the same dragon marks and ripples appeared on the true dragon palace, blocking him outside. He was not even as close as Ao Sheng. This is strange. Xiaohua was surprised as well, as he had lost the connection with Reverend Yun as soon as he entered the True Dragon Palace. Now, when he saw Ao Shang could not enter the palace as well, he felt a little embarrassed. So he urged his body to get closer to the palace. However, Xiaohua was still weaker than Ao Jia. Just as he moved his body, the dragon marks and ripples appeared, blocking him in the sea. Since Ao Jia could not enter the palace, Aoe and the other elders did not go any closer. They just stood aside and watched quietly. But when Ao Jia saw that Xiaohua could not get close to the True Dragon Palace, his suspicion that Xiaohua was Reverend Yun's clone had mostly faded away. "Why don't you come in?" Reverend Yun poked his head out of the palace and grabbed Ao Shang's neck with his dragon claw, trying to drag him in. Unfortunately, even with Reverend Yun's help, Ao Shang's dragon body could only stick to the door of the True Dragon Palace. He could not enter. "Reverend Yun, please go in first," Ao Jia said helplessly. "This True Dragon Palace is only there to block the dragon marks and ripples of the real True Dragon Palace." "The real? You don't have to say that, Grand Elder," Reverend Yun answered indifferently. "I have already seen the True Dragon Palace in the center of the palace." "That's good." Ao Jia smiled and said, "Reverend Yun, please go in and have a look. We have never been in this True Dragon Palace before." Upon hearing that, Reverend Yun loosened his dragon claw and turned to enter the palace. Just as Ao Jia had said, the entire True Dragon Palace was empty and devoid of any decorations. There was only a powerful light spot in the center of the palace, which looked like the center of the entire world. As soon as Reverend Yun set foot in the palace, he saw the light spot at first glance. Before his vision or will could fall on it, a magnificent image of a dragon immediately emerged in his mind, sweeping away all his doubts. Controlling his dragon body, Reverend Yun flew closer to the light dot. The closer he got to the light dot, the smaller his dragon body became, and the larger the light dot became. In just a few breaths of time, Reverend Yun had vanished from the True Dragon Palace. He had transformed into a dragon that was the same size as the light dot, and had crashed into the real True Dragon Palace. In the eyes of Reverend Yun, the whole world was different. The huge palace became clearer, and an indescribable sense of familiarity was emanating from it. When the huge dragon scale-like door was revealed, Reverend Yun flew into it without hesitation. Rumble! A light that seemed to be able to split the heaven and earth shone out from the True Dragon Palace, revealing a vast dragon domain in front of Reverend Yun. Countless dragon marks transformed into the firmament, the blue sea, the starry sky, and the desert. Groups of dragons appeared everywhere like dominators, roaring and fighting, moving mountains and emptying seas, and overturning nature. "You're finally here." In the end, all the dragons transformed into a huge, colorful dragon image, which seemed to be transformed from the entire dragon domain, and its appearance was exactly the same as Ao Shang and the dragon god that Reverend Yun had met in the ruins. Waves of profound knowledge in the language of dragons fell into Reverend Yun's mind, while beams of light and shadows carrying heavenly arts fell into his eyes. After an unknown period of time, 80% of the nearly boundless dragon image had disappeared, and the world in the True Dragon Palace had become faint and misty. At this moment, the dragon image stopped talking in the language of dragons, and said in a somewhat gloomy tone, "This is what happened. Since you're here, I'm afraid my true self is most likely dead. Your overall strength is still too weak, so you only need to know the truth, and you can't do anything for now. I'll seal your memory first, and when you come back from the Myriad Dragon's abyss and your overall strength meets the requirement, you'll be able to undo the seal yourself." After that, Reverend Yun felt his mind become heavy. Apart from the things related to the Myriad Dragon's abyss in the dragon domain, everything else began to become blurry. "Stay here and cultivate. You're still too weak." Gradually, the dragon image disappeared and transformed back into a myriad of creatures, while a thunderous voice echoed out in the surroundings. Reverend Yun retreated from the True Dragon Palace and saw Ao Shang flying in. "You can come in now?" asked Reverend Yun curiously. Ao Shang's true cultivation base was given to him by Reverend Yun, so he respected him even more. He quickly stopped in the water and said respectfully, "Yes, Master. I couldn't get close to the True Dragon Palace before, but as the dragon formation grew weaker, I was able to come in." "Where are Ao Jia and the others?" asked Reverend Yun vigilantly. He knew that this must be the reason why the dragon image had disappeared. Grand Elder and the others still couldn't get close, not even Xiao Longsher. Answered Ao Sheng hastily. I see. Come with me. Reverend Yu nodded and led Ao Sheng into the real true dragon palace. You're back? Why are you so weak? His voice was as soft as the wind. Then, dragon marks filled the sky and drifted down like snowflakes, falling into Reverend Yun's dragon body and Ao Sheng's dragon body. Rumble. As the dragon marks fell, the shadow of Ao Sheng's dragon god emerged again. Beams of golden light, layers of dragon aura, and pillars of dragon might were generated from the shadow. Then they all merged into Ao Sheng's body. Once again, Ao Sheng's eyes became hazy, and he fell asleep. Reverend Yun's dragon body had also undergone some changes. But when he looked at Ao Sheng's sleeping posture, he smiled and said, "This is your own fortune, but I've gained a lot from it. As for these benefits, I won't fight with you." After saying that, Reverend Yun stretched his dragon body and flew out from the real true dragon palace. "How is it?" asked Xiao Hua and Ao Jia at the same time when they saw Reverend Yun coming out. Reverend Yun first looked at Ao Jia, then said, "Ao Sheng is now cultivating in the true dragon palace. I can't tell how long he has been cultivating, but if I'm not mistaken, he should have stepped into the 9th tier of Yuan Qi when he comes out from his seclusion." Thank you so much, Lord Sacred Dragon. Ao Jia knew that Reverend Yun was helping him on purpose, so he quickly expressed his gratitude. Reverend Yun ignored Ao Jia, then looked at Xiao Hua and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, I'm sorry, but there is no information about the immortal formation in the true dragon palace." Xiao Hua's face was filled with disappointment when he heard Reverend Yun's words. Then he clenched his teeth and said, "Well, fellow Taoist Yun, are you cultivating in the true dragon palace? Or do you want to follow me to Thunder Temple?" "Are you going to Thunder Temple, Master Xiao?" Ao Jia was a little surprised. "Why don't you stay a few more days on Dragon Island? We can discuss the countermeasures again." "No." Xiao Hua shook his head and said, "If I don't get rid of the mayflies, I'll feel like a fishbone is stuck in my throat. Now I'm anxious to find out how to break the immortal formation." Thunder Temple. Ao Jia nodded his head slightly. "You're right. The Buddhist sect of Thunder Temple is involved in reincarnation. Perhaps they might have some special records." At this moment, Reverend Yun had also made up his mind. He said softly, "I will naturally follow fellow Taoist Xiao to Thunder Temple. I was able to condense my body into a dragon in the 3 continents because of the Dragon Clan of the 4 Seas. Now that the Dragon Clan of the 4 Seas is in trouble, I can't just stand by and watch." "Good." Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, "Then let's not delay any further. Let's go to Thunder Temple together." Seeing Xiao Hua in such a hurry, Ao Jia pondered for a while and said softly, "Master Xiao, Thunder Temple isn't like our Dragon Island. It's the place where all Buddhas worship the Mahavairakana revered Buddha. It's also the center of Buddhism's faith. You are already a Mahayana realm cultivator of Taoism, and have also become the Buddhist sect's Namo Merciful Mahavairakana Bodhisattva. However, once you arrive at Thunder Temple, the Mahavairakana revered Buddha would have thousands of ways to deal with you. You better send a message, and let the Mahavairakana revered Buddha and the Dipankara archaic Buddha meet at Thunder Temple." Seeing Ao Jia's sincerity, Xiao Hua nodded and smiled. "Thank you for your reminder, Grand Elder. I understand. To be honest, I've offended the Buddhism sect in Longevity Town. Not only did I steal the limelight of the sutra praying in Nirvana, I even messed up the immortal Buddha ceremony. If it weren't for the 4 great families plotting against the immortal emperor, I wouldn't have been able to escape. Now that I'm heading to Thunder Temple, I'm a little nervous. However, for the sake of the billions of lives in the 3 continents, I have no choice but to go." "How brave, how virtuous, how magnificent." Ao Jia praised 3 times and led the other 8 elders of the Dragon Hall to send Xiao Hua out of the Dragon Island to the teleportation passage. When the dragon generals guarding the teleportation passage saw the 9 elders of the Dragon Hall gathered, they were all shocked and hurriedly activated the teleportation passage. Ao Jia ordered, "Activate the teleportation passage to the Southern Sea Dragon Palace and inform the Southern Sea Dragon Palace that Dragon Teacher Xiao Hua hurriedly stopped him. Grand Elder, I'll go to the Northern Sea Dragon Palace first. Oh. Ao Jia was slightly stunned and asked curiously, could it be that dragon teacher Xiao wants to go to the Great Sage Hall first? That's right. Xiao Hua smiled and nodded. Didn't Grand Elder already remind me? Now that I'm on good terms with the Golden Winged Rock, he can't stand the way the Thunder Temple does things the most. I'll go and greet him first. Oh right, if the Dragon Island has any method to directly send a message to the Great Sage Hall, there's no harm in letting the Golden Winged Rock and the heaven-defying Lightning Phoenix make a trip to Baiqingyu. After all, it'll take me a lot of time to travel from the Northern Sea Dragon Palace to the Great Sage Hall. Rest assured, Dragon Teacher Xiao. Our Dragon Hall does have a special communication passage to the Great Sage Hall. I'll definitely inform the two great sages of Dragon Teacher Xiao's whereabouts. Ao Jia nodded and ordered the dragon generals to activate the teleportation passage again. Seeing that Xiao Hua and Reverend Yun were sent away by the teleportation passage, Ao Jia's expression changed. He looked at Aoe and the other elders and ordered, let's hurry back to the Dragon Hall and discuss how to avoid this disaster. We were too relaxed about this apocalyptic warning. In my opinion, Xiao Hua's trip will be a fruitless one. The war between the 3 rivers and 4 seas, the 3 continents, and the world-destroying ephemera is absolutely unavoidable. Chapter 4706. Understood. When Aoe and the others saw how nervous Ao Jia was, they knew it was not a trivial matter. Their hearts skipped a beat, and they answered at the same time before flying back to Longjiang. Putting aside the fact that the dragon race had begun to avoid the disaster, Xiao Hua had brought Reverend Yun through the teleportation tunnel and arrived at the teleportation formation in North Sea Dragon Palace. Ao Go, the master of North Sea Dragon Palace, had been waiting in the teleportation hall after receiving the message from the Dragon Palace. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua and Reverend Yun were in a hurry, and after exchanging a few pleasantries with him, they left for Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Ao Go wanted to ask about the Dragon Palace, but when he saw Xiao Hua frowning, he knew he had something important to tell him, so he dared not ask. After flying out of the Dragon Palace, Xiao Hua asked impatiently in his mind, fellow Taoist Yun, what exactly happened in the True Dragon Palace? What else could it be? As you have expected, the True Dragon Palace is a backup plan left behind by His Majesty Dragon God, and it was prepared for his reincarnation. Reverend Yun explained, perhaps His Majesty Dragon God had left it here on Dragon Island before he went to ruins. I remembered clearly what it was at that time, but His Majesty Dragon God said I was too weak to know too much now, so he sealed my memory. Only the location of Myriad Dragon's abyss in the Dragon Realm and the cultivation method were left behind. Perhaps I will only be able to find out the truth after I ascend to Dragon Realm. Damn it! Xiao Hua slapped his thigh and cried out, these 4 continents are definitely not ordinary realms. The reincarnation of Nanwu Maitreya, His Majesty Dragon God, and Ananda. All these almighty experts were reincarnated into this realm. What's more, this realm is divided by the Immortal Realm, Buddha Realm, and Demon League. We still don't know if it is an ordinary realm or not. Reverend Yun said with a wry smile. All we know is that if we don't find a way to kill the mayflies and break the dividing immortal formation, the 3 continents will be wiped out. The annihilation this time is completely different from the annihilation in ruins. You're right. Xiao Hua was also very worried. The ruins are the fragments of the desolate age. Although there are many living beings inside, it's not even 1 in 10 million of the living beings in the 3 continents. Moreover, whether it's the Confucian cultivators, the Buddhist sects, or the demon race, the 3 continents all have a long history. This is the origin of the ancient times. The Confucian cultivators have a term called civilization. Since the beginning of the human race, this civilization has lasted for countless years. The noble spirit that has settled in the world is the glory of this civilization. If the red mayfly extinguishes the fire of light, who knows how many years it will take to reignite it? The most important thing is, Taoist Yun glanced at Xiao Hua and said, if we don't kill the world destruction mayfly, we won't be able to survive. Not bad. Xiao Hua smiled coldly, don't look at how calm Ao Jia is in front of us. Maybe after we leave, he will immediately mobilize all the dragons and prepare to defend Dragon Island. Aojia is too cunning. I don't like it, said Reverend Yun coolly, while in his mind, he told Xiaohua what he had gained in the True Dragon Palace. He's really generous. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at the sacred realm of 1,000 demons in the distance, which looked like monsters crawling on the ground, and said, using the entire world as a springboard and the reincarnation cycle as a path, the cultivators who cultivate arduously in order to ascend and break free from the constraints of the world are really just ants and mayflies in the eyes of these almighty experts. Mayflies? Reverend Yun laughed. That depends on where the mayflies are from. If the mayflies from the upper realm were to come to the 4 great continents, they would be extraordinary existences. Since there are no records of immortal arrays on Dragon Island, we can only rely on the Thunder Temple. Xiaohua moved like lightning, and Reverend Yun followed closely behind. Xiaohua said inwardly, if there are records of immortal arrays in the Great Holy Palace, Fengwu should have discovered it when he was studying the ancient books in the Great Holy Palace. Seems. Reverend Yun nodded. Fellow Taoist, you don't think the Great Holy Palace is important. Today you're just unwilling to give up. So you came to ask again. That's right. The Great Holy Palace is different from other places. Xiaohua explained. Fengwu is now the first great saint of the Great Holy Palace, the nominal ruler of the sacred realm of 1,000 demons. Of course, his foundation is still shallow, so he can't extend his reach to every corner of the sacred realm of 1,000 demons. However, he has more than enough control over the Great Holy Palace. So, if the Great Holy Palace has any information about immortal arrays, he will definitely inform I at the first possible moment. Reverend Yun pondered for a while, then said, the things left behind by Supreme Dragon God are a little strange. I will meditate and study them first. You go and meet Fengwu yourself. All right. Xiaohua agreed. Today's matter is to break the immortal arrays. Fellow Taoist, you can study them first. Who knows, you might find some secrets about immortal arrays. Fellow Taoist, you think too much. Reverend Yun smiled, then entered the space in a flash. Xiaohua flew for a while, then took out the Kunlun mirror and brought out Princess Xixia and the Pegasus flying chariot. Both of them then sat on the flying chariot hand in hand. Although Princess Xixia did not ask much about Dragon Island, Xiaohua still gave her a rough explanation. In the end, he said with some disappointment, there are no records of immortal arrays on Dragon Island. Then, I can only focus on the Great Holy Palace and Thunder Temple. Princess Xixia pondered for a while, then nodded and said, if what you said is true, then the immortal arrays were set up by Tao sect, Buddhism sect, and Demon clan. I'm afraid we can only find traces of them from Thunder Temple, Great Holy Palace, and Dragon Island. As for the Immortal Palace, as far as I know, there has never been any records of this. Definitely not. Xiaohua said with a smile. Even the incarnations of the Masters of Supreme Pure Palace and Jade Pure Palace didn't know that Dawn Rain Continent was one of the 4 great continents. How could the Immortal Palace have any records of this? Xiaohua. Princess Xixia pursed her lips and said with a smile, I'm afraid you're afraid of His Majesty's scheme, so you subconsciously want to avoid him? Xiaohua rubbed his nose and said with a bitter smile, you're right. When facing His Majesty I feel like a child. When His Majesty said that sentence, I accidentally didn't hear it clearly and didn't understand it, so I might have fallen into his scheme. So, unless I have no other choice, I definitely don't want to see him. But for me. Princess Xixia slightly leaned to the side and leaned her head on Xiaohua's shoulder. She murmured, you threatened His Majesty several times, and even fought your way to the southern heavenly gate and sent your troops to the end of the world. I'm really satisfied. Xiaohua wanted to say something, but when he thought about how he probably wouldn't be able to return to Dawn Rain Continent, and how he would most likely have to join hands with Princess Xixia to fight against the world-destroying ephemera in the future, he closed his mouth and lightly embraced Princess Xixia's slender waist with his right hand. Just like that, they sat on the flying carriage and flew towards Bai Qingyu. Without needing to fly close to Bai Qingyu, Xiaohua already released his divine sense. Boom boom. 2 pillars of starlight and moonlight soared into the sky, and a huge halo of light flew out. The golden-winged great rock and the heaven-defying thunder phoenix had already received the news and came over from Bai Qingyu. Xiao Hua kept the flying carriage and held Princess Zixia's hand. He stopped in midair and watched the two great sages of the Great Sage Hall transform into their human forms and land. The golden-winged great rock didn't wait for them to land and shouted, "Dragon Master Xiao, what's the matter with you? Could it be that you don't trust me? You even came from afar to supervise me?" When Xiao Hua heard that, he knew that Aojia didn't explain the reason why he went to Dragon Island. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Rock Sage, you're overthinking. Today, I came to see Rock Sage and Phoenix Sage because I have an extremely important matter to ask." "Oh? Fellow Taoist, please speak." Feng Wu didn't fly close, but Xiao Hua had already transmitted his voice in his mind. However, he still pretended that he didn't know and asked curiously. Xiao Hua told him his thoughts. The golden-winged great rock was stunned. He shouted in surprise, "Dragon Master Xiao, what did you say?" "The abyss of the West Sea. There's a celestial world formation that separates the four great continents? This is absolutely impossible." "What's impossible?" Xiao Hua asked thoughtfully. The golden-winged great rock smiled and said, "Tens of thousands of years ago, a flood dragon in the East Sea offended me. I chased after him. That day, the two of us kept flying towards the west of the West Sea. I don't know how long we flew. I forced him to fly straight and couldn't turn back. In the end, he died of exhaustion. If there was a celestial formation like Dragon Master Xiao said, I would have encountered it back then." Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He waved his hand and said, "Rock Sage, you don't know how powerful that celestial formation is. This celestial formation has the Buddha sect's Great Meru formation. The closer you get to this Buddha formation, the smaller your body becomes. It's like you're at the edge of the world. You'll never be able to get close to or come into contact with the Buddha formation." The golden-winged great rock came to a realization and said in shock, "If that's the case, how can we break the formation?" "That's right. That's why we have to find the formation core of this celestial formation or its flaw. Only then can we break the formation." Xiao Hua's gaze swept across the golden-winged great rock and Feng Wu. "Have you seen any records of this in the Great Sage Hall?" "No." The golden-winged great rock shook his head. "I'm not interested in this. I've never seen it before." "I've never seen it before either." Feng Wu also shook his head resolutely. "Forget it." Xiao Hua had already known from Feng Wu that he was destined to fail this time. He waved his hand and said, "I'll go take a look at the Lane Temple first. Great sages, return to the Great Sage Hall and look around carefully." "Okay, we understand." The golden-winged great rock and Feng Wu both agreed and sent Xiao Hua away. Xiao Hua naturally didn't come to Baiqingyu just to ask about the Great Sage Hall. He also wanted to borrow the transportation formation of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. After all, the transportation formation of the Western Paradise was near the Great Snow Mountain. It was much more convenient than the transportation passage of the Southern Sea Dragon Palace. Chapter 4707. Seeing Xiao Hua and Princess Zixia leaving using the teleportation array, Feng Wu looked at the sky in the distance and said in a low voice, "Peng Sage, Dragon Teacher Xiao is right. If we don't get rid of those strange insects, they might really block the passage to the Shattered Void. At that time, the Demon Alliance's Star-Moon passage won't arrive. Even if we can surpass the laws of heaven and earth of the three continents. No, the laws of heaven and earth might change at that time. We can't shatter the starry sky. The situation is urgent." The Golden Rock's expression was also serious. "We were careless earlier. It's not too late to mend the pen after the sheep are lost." Feng Wu gritted his teeth. "This sage will take a look at the depths of the Great Sage Hall. I'll leave the Thousand Demons' sacred realm to Rock Sage and the other great sages." "The depths of the Great Sage Hall?" The Golden Rock was shocked. That's the shattered starry sky. This sage used bravado to force his way in, and was almost killed by the cracks in the starry sky. Today is a special day. Feng Wu smiled. "If we don't take risks, how can we gain anything? This matter can't be solved by taking risks." The Golden Rock shook his head. "This sage feels that you should discuss with Xiao Longsher and prepare a foolproof plan. There's no need to let him know," Feng Wu said firmly. "If he knows that this sage is going to enter the depths of the Great Sage Hall, he'll definitely stop me." This sage knows him too well. Sigh. The golden rock sighed. This sage is really envious of Xiao Longsher. He's really lucky to have such a close friend like you. Haha. Feng Wu spread his wings and the pillar of starlight fell. In a flash, his figure had already crossed 1,000 miles. His forthright voice came from afar. Rock Sage, you and I don't know each other without fighting. Aren't we friends who have gone through life and death together? Why are you envious of Xiao Longsher? Haha. Not bad, not bad. The golden rock also spread his wings and followed Feng Wu back to the great sage hall. Princess Zixia naturally didn't know that Xiao Hua had set up teleportation formations in both the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm and the Pure Land of Bliss. When she followed Xiao Hua out of the teleportation formation in the Pure Land of Bliss, she looked left and right. After a while she cried out in surprise, Xiao Hua is this the Great Snow Mountain? That's right. Xiao Hua raised his hand and pointed at the distant snowy mountain. That's the snowy mountain where you and I first met. However, the Great Snow Mountain has already become Namo Maitreya Buddha's place of enlightenment. I'm afraid it's not convenient for you to go there. I understand. Princess Zixia blinked her eyes and said with a smile, you wanted to go to the Thunder Temple, but you were afraid that you would fall into Mahavaracana's trap. That's why you dragged Namo Maitreya Buddha with you. However, Namo Maitreya Buddha had already betrayed Lane Temple. How could he return to Lane Temple? Also, you're being too careful. The Vairocana World Venerable is the most trustworthy of all the supreme beings in the 3 continents. What's there to believe? Xiao Hua cursed inwardly, putting aside the matter of Zheng Kong. Just the matter of suppressing the Grand Mist Ancestors' Yin-Yang diagram in the West Sea's eye, and using the Buddha's decree to suppress the West Sea Fire Dragon's soul proves that the Vairocana World Venerable is not a simple Buddha Lord. However, Xiao Hua did not say it out loud. He smiled and said, no matter what, this Xiao is still the Buddhist sect's Namo Mahavaracana Bodhisattva. Seeing that the Lane Temple and Exquisite Temple are not on good terms, this Xiao feels uncomfortable in his heart. Now that the apocalyptic omen has appeared, the Buddhist sect is also a powerful force to resist the world-exterminating mayfly. If the Lane Temple and Exquisite Temple become one, they will be able to exterminate the world-exterminating mayfly more effectively. If the two continue to be at odds, the world-exterminating mayfly will attack separately. This Xiao wants to do a good deed this time. Princess Zixia shook her head. This matter is simple, but it's extremely difficult to do it. This is the difference in the Buddhist sect's teachings. It's not something that can be solved with a few words. Where there's a will, there's a way. Xiao Hua took out the Kunlun mirror and said with a smile, this Xiao doesn't know anything else, but what I know now is that my princess should avoid it for a while. Princess Zixia's face slightly reddened. She curled her lips and glared at Xiao Hua, rebuking him. Who is your princess? His Majesty hasn't. That's true. Xiao Hua looked up at the sky and shouted, Master of the Once-You Temple, why aren't you setting up the array? After setting up the 9 provinces great array, this Xiao can marry my princess in a proper way. Okay, don't make a fuss about nothing. Although she knew that no one could hear them, Princess Zixia still stopped him with a burning face. Xiao Hua smiled and shook the Kunlun mirror, putting Princess Zixia into the space. He looked in the direction of the snowy mountain and flew over. This was already the 3rd time Xiao Hua came to Exquisite Temple. At this time, Exquisite Temple was completely different from before. Not to mention that many Buddhist halls had been built around the snowy mountain. Just the Exquisite Temple, which had been expanded more than 10 times, was flourishing with incense, which was hard for Xiao Hua to imagine. Confucian cultivators have a saying, the mountain is not high, the water is not deep, the dragon is spiritual. It is indeed so. Xiao Hua pondered, although it is the same Exquisite Temple, where the inheritance of Tantra is, there was no incense before, only an old monk was guarding this place. But today Namo Maitreya has set up a dojo here. Thousands of people are not afraid of the towering snowy mountain, not afraid of the remoteness of Exquisite Temple. They come from all over the Pure Land to worship. There is no other reason but to solidify the name. Xiao Hua's gaze moved away from the unfamiliar Exquisite Temple and looked up at the sky. He saw that there were thousands of Buddhist auras everywhere, and clusters of Buddhist auras condensed into the shape of lotus platforms. A faint sound of Buddhist chants and the sound of wooden fish came from the void. This sound passed through the lotus platforms condensed by Buddhist auras, and the Buddhist statues of Namo Maitreya with one hand pointing to the sky and the other pointing to the ground appeared from time to time. Namo Maitreya. Xiaohua chanted Buddhist chants, and lightning surged around his body as he rushed towards the overflowing Buddhist auras. Fortunately, there was no need for Xiaohua to use his divine ability to find the location of Namo Maitreya's dojo. A loud Buddhist chant came from the Buddhist auras. Namo Maitreya Guanyin Bodhisattva, how have you been? Xiaohua's figure stopped, and with a smile on his face, he looked towards the Buddhist auras. He saw that the Buddhist auras were as dense as milk, the dazzling light was dazzling, but it was not ostentatious as it flickered in the sky. Numerous Buddhist lotuses were born out of thin air. Numerous heavenly dragons danced with the wind, and the Sanskrit chants came from the void. From the tear in the void, Namo Maitreya's dojo Samantabhadra followed behind him. Greetings to Namo Maitreya's dojo. Xiaohua put his palms together. Namo Maitreya. Namo Maitreya's dojo chanted Buddhist chants. Xiao Tanyue, you are too polite. Hearing Namo Maitreya's dojo calling Xiaohua Tanyue, Samantabhadra, who was at the side, frowned for no reason. He understood that Xiaohua and Namo Maitreya's dojo were old acquaintances, and now that Shaolin Long Temple was fighting against Lane Temple as an equal, no matter in terms of Buddhist preaching and support, Shaolin Long Temple was at a disadvantage. Now, Xiaohua could be considered as the number one human cultivator, so it was fine if Namo Maitreya's dojo did not rope him in, but there was no reason to push Xiaohua away. Xiaohua was also stunned, and looked at Namo Maitreya's dojo with some confusion, quietly waiting for him to explain. Namo Maitreya's dojo did not change and said indifferently, Xiao Tanyue, you and I are old acquaintances. Before I achieved Buddhist enlightenment, I received a lot of help from you, this friendship. I won't go into detail. However, ever since I set up the dojo in Snowy Mountain, I haven't seen Tanyue come to visit, so I don't understand. Furthermore, the things that Tanyue is hiding from this seat are a little too many. This seat has never thought that Tanyue would actually be able to attain my Buddhist sect's Namo Great Merciful Guanyin Bodhisattva Buddha fruit. Tanyue's performance in Longevity Town was not only a mockery to my Buddhist sect, but also a mockery to me. Haha. Xiaohua suddenly realized, and said with a smile, so that's the case, no wonder Namo Maitreya treated me like a stranger at the Jade Pool meeting, and did not even congratulate me. Actually, it's not that I intend to conceal it, but I've never thought of obtaining the Buddha fruit of the Buddhist sect. After all, I'm a Tao cultivator. Why would I achieve Buddhist enlightenment? As for Longevity Town, that's my secret. I don't think it's necessary to tell Namo Maitreya. Besides, Namo Maitreya, don't you also have secrets that you didn't tell me? I never thought that the little monk at that time could achieve Namo Maitreya's Buddhist enlightenment. Namo Maitreya pondered for a moment, then put his palms together and said, Namo Maitreya, I wonder what identity Tanyue is using to come to my exquisite temple today? Namo Maitreya. Xiaohua said respectfully, stepping into the holy land of Buddhism, I'm naturally using the identity of Guanyin Bodhisattva. Namo Maitreya. A smile appeared on Namo Maitreya's face, and he said, I wonder if Guanyin came to my exquisite temple to discuss the essence of Buddhism with me? Or is there something else? Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and said, Namo Maitreya is wrong. Disciples' Buddhist enlightenment came suddenly, and disciples' Buddhist cultivation is too shallow. How could I discuss the essence of Buddhism with Namo Maitreya? Disciple came here to discuss with Namo Maitreya about the other party's world-destroying mayfly. World-destroying mayfly? Is that the strange insect we encountered at the Jade Pool meeting? Namo Maitreya said with a smile, that day, whether it was my exquisite temple or Lane Temple, didn't we already agree to join hands to resist the strange insect? And we also decided on a countermeasure? Could it be that there's still something unfinished? The world-destroying mayfly is far more powerful than we thought. Xiaohua stopped smiling and said solemnly, this insect came from the upper realm. The upper realm? Without waiting for Namo Maitreya to speak, Namo Maitreya Samantabhadra also cried out involuntarily, but in an instant, he put his palms together and said, Namo Maitreya, senior brother, disciple was rude. Chapter 4708. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Xiaohua returned the greeting. Junior apprentice brother is too polite. When I heard this news, I was even more shocked than you. Also, the higher realm I mentioned might be above the immortal realm. Sigh. The Maitreya Buddha of the world and Namo Maitreya Samantabhadra Bodhisattva sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at each other with shock in their eyes. So, Xiaohua explained, World Lord, after I received the news, I immediately rushed to the Dragon Island and the Great Sage Hall to find a way to exterminate the mayflies. Unfortunately, there were no results at the two demon race and dragon race sacred grounds. Now, I've come to the small exquisite temple to see if there are any good methods. The Maitreya Buddha of the world smiled bitterly. Guanyin Venerable, you overestimate the small exquisite temple. I've just established my Tao arena in the small exquisite temple. If I preach Buddhism and fight against the mayflies, I might be able to help. If I find a way to exterminate the mayflies from Buddhism's legacies. Speaking till here, the Maitreya Buddha of the world suddenly realized. He raised his hand and pointed at Xiaohua, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Guanyin Venerable, you're starting to play tricks with me now? Do you want to go to the Thunder Sound Temple but are afraid that the Mahavarakana Buddha of the world and the Dipankara Archaic Buddha of the world will harm you? Is that why you came to the small exquisite temple to drag me here? No. Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand, saying, although I've attained enlightenment, I don't know much about Buddhism's secrets. Therefore, I came to the small exquisite temple with the intention of seeking guidance. As for the Thunder Sound Temple, to be honest, I've offended the Dipankara Archaic Buddha of the world in the Longevity Town. I'm really afraid of going to the Thunder Sound Temple. Therefore, if the small exquisite temple doesn't have a way to exterminate the world exterminating mayflies, I'm also thinking of asking the Maitreya Buddha of the world exterminating mayflies for help. Namo Maitreya Buddha. The Maitreya Buddha of the world Lord chanted. Guanyin Venerable's heart cares for the billions of life forms of the three great continents, and doesn't fear personal danger. Lord Guanyin Buddha of the three rivers, four seas and three seas and three continents. It's no wonder that Lord Guanyin Bodhisattva could attain enlightenment as a Buddha's Buddha of the three Buddha. Namo Maitreya. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Daxing also put his palms together and said, Senior brother, the mercy in your heart is great. This disciple cannot compare to you. Xiaohua also didn't waste any time and said with a smile, if Shaolinglong Temple doesn't have a method to exterminate insects, then will the revered one of the world follow me to Lane Temple now? Of course. Maitreya Buddha also knew the urgency of the matter, so he agreed and said to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, I'll accompany Guanyin Venerable to Lane Temple. You explain the power of the world-destroying strange insect to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the temple. Discuss the countermeasures and wait for me to return. Revered one of the world. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was shocked and reminded him, Lane Temple is no longer a good place. Revered one of the world should consider carefully before making a decision. Maitreya Buddha of the world said proudly, when I was able to come out of the Lane Temple, I can enter the Lane Temple again today. Also with Guanyin Venerable by our side. Do you think the two of us can't defeat the Mahavarakana Revered One and the Dipankara Archaic Buddha of the world? Yes, disciple understands. Please be careful. Revered one of the world and senior apprentice brother. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva pressed his palms together. Disciple respectfully awaits the revered one and senior apprentice brother's safe return. Namantabhadra Buddha. Xiaohua also pressed his palms together. Junior apprentice brother, farewell. After Xiaohua finished speaking, Maitreya Buddha of the world raised his hand and pointed at the radiance behind his head. A ray of Buddha light gushed out from the radiance and surged into the void. The void in front of Xiaohua was torn apart layer by layer. As the void overlapped, a majestic Lane temple overflowing with Buddha light vaguely appeared in the void. Just as the Buddha light entered the Lane temple, the void immediately collapsed and everything disappeared. A teleportation passage condensed by Buddha light appeared beneath Maitreya Buddha of the world and Xiaohua's feet. Namantabhadra Buddha. Guanyin Venerable, please. Maitreya Buddha of the world looked at the golden runes condensed by Buddha light flowing around the passage like tadpoles. He chanted Buddha's name and raised his hand to signal Xiaohua. Haha. I want the revered one's divine ability. Xiaohua smiled. He stepped on the teleportation passage and said, although disciple has already attained the fruit, this Buddha fruit is neither fish nor fowl. I actually didn't go to the Lei Temple's Buddha light to receive me. That's easy. Maitreya Buddha of the world also stepped on the teleportation passage and smiled. You haven't condensed a Buddha body, so of course you don't have the Lei Temple's symbol. Once you reach the Lei Temple, you only need to condense a Buddha body in the lotus washing pond. Then you can freely come and go to the Lei Temple. Xiaohua and Maitreya Buddha of the world both stepped on the teleportation passage. Woo-woo. The strange sound of wind whistling came from the space around the passage. After the two figures disappeared into the passage also disappeared into the void. Samantapadra's body flashed with Buddha light. He tore through the void and returned to the Shaoluo Temple's dojo. Xiaohua followed Maitreya Buddha of the world through the void on the Rainbow Bridge. He saw the source of the Buddha light. There were many wonderful sounds and Sanskrit chants. In the distance, there seemed to be an incomparably huge temple emitting a Buddha light that was more vast than the sea. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes. He knew. This should be the most mysterious Lei temple in the 3 continents. At the same time, in the Thunder Temple, the Mahavarakana revered Buddha was explaining the Dharma to the Golden Lotus. However, he suddenly stopped and closed his eyes. The bright side of the Buddha's light was benevolent, while the side of the Buddha's light that was withered was indescribably ferocious. Amitabha. When Maitreya Buddha of the world opened his eyes again, he looked outside the Lei Temple and chanted, "They finally came." World Lord. Namantapadra Manjushri asked curiously, "They? Who are they?" "They are naturally them." Maitreya Buddha of the world didn't explain. He should have come long ago. Namantapadra Manjushri was puzzled. He didn't understand why Maitreya Buddha of the world first said, "They," then he. However, after a while he had an idea. He smiled and said, "Namantapadra, I understand now. Samantapadra has returned. Open the door and welcome Maitreya Buddha of the world and Guanyin Banti." The Dipankara archaic Buddha of the world still looked miserable as he spoke. Namantapadra. As thousands of Buddhas chanted, the guardian heavenly king opened the door of the Lei Temple. Maitreya Buddha of the world and Dipankara archaic Buddha of the world walked in front, with the other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas following behind them. The end of the Rainbow Bridge opened by Maitreya Buddha of the world was the same as before. It was right below the stairs of the Lei Temple. When Xiaohua and Maitreya Buddha of the world landed on the stairs of the Lei Temple, the door of the Lei Temple opened. The Thunderclap Temple's doors opened at this moment. Xiaohua only saw layers upon layers of Buddhist phenomena passing by. Thousands of golden runes interweaved together, forming a world resembling a spiderweb. When his eyes lit up, a familiar voice resounded. Namo Dipankara archaic Buddha welcomes the return of Guanyin Bodhisattva. Xiaohua naturally knew that this was the Dipankara archaic Buddha's voice. When he raised his head, he saw a Mahavira hall in front of him. In front of the hall, 2 Buddha lords were already standing. Behind the 2 Buddha lords, the Manjushri Bodhisattva of Namo wisdom stood alone. Even more Buddhas, Bodhisattvas and Arhats stood behind the Manjushri Bodhisattva with their palms pressed together. Seeing this, Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He put his palms together and said, "Disciple greets the 2 venerables of the world." Namodaji Manjushri didn't know what the others were thinking. However, after hearing Xiaohua calling himself a disciple, Namoda Manjushri calmed down and a smile appeared on his face. "Namo Amitabha. Welcome back to Lei Temple, senior brother." Namo Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva smiled. "Namo Amitabha. Welcome back Namo Merciful Manjushri Bodhisattva of world." The group of Buddhas chanted, "Greetings, senior brothers." Xiaohua smiled and returned the greeting. A peaceful atmosphere appeared in front of the Lei Temple. Dang dang dang. The bell rang 9 times in a row. Tens of thousands of Buddha lights rolled into the void like waves. The entire Nirvana world was filled with Buddha lights. The Mahavarakana revered Buddha chanted, "Namo Merciful Manjushri Bodhisattva of world is back. Amitabha Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, Amitabha Buddha." Countless Buddhist chants sounded from all over the pure land of ultimate bliss and fell into the void. Then countless strands of faith power appeared out of thin air and entered Xiaohua's body. Manjushri Bodhisattva, please enter the lotus cleansing pond to sculpt your body. Only in my Buddhist sex hall can you leave your Buddha golden body. The Mahavarakana revered Buddha was afraid that Xiaohua didn't understand, so he explained a bit more. He raised his hand and pointed at Xiaohua's feet. Looking at Xiaohua's feet again, that boundless pool of jade water was revealed. This jade water was calm, and countless golden inscriptions were hidden in the jade water. Xiaohua's gaze swept over. It seemed that every drop of jade water revealed a Buddha kingdom. Moreover, this Buddha kingdom was born where Xiaohua's gaze fell, and then disappeared when Xiaohua's gaze left. Above the jade water, countless Buddha lotuses covered the sky and the sun. Moreover, these Buddha lotuses bloomed with 9 colors. Oh, this is a bit strange. Clearly looks like there are countless Buddha lotuses, but how come there are only 81 of them? Xiaohua was a bit puzzled. He raised his head and looked at the Mahavarakana revered Buddha. The Mahavarakana revered Buddha smiled and said, Namo Mahavarakana revered Buddha, Manjushri Bodhisattva, as long as my Buddhist sex Bodhisattva achieves fruition, it means severing the past. The previous mortal body will turn into nothingness here. Only the golden body condensed in the lotus cleansing pond is the true golden body. Since the revered Buddha admits that he is my Buddhist disciple, then he should. The revered Buddha's body? Chapter 4709. Speaking till here. A surprised expression appeared on the Maitreya Buddha's face. This was because Xiaohua's body didn't turn into nothingness like before, nor did it turn into a silhouette formed by dots and lines. The Maitreya Buddha stopped being surprised and looked at the Mahavarakana Buddha and the Dipankara archaic Buddha, no longer speaking. Amitabha. The Dipankara archaic Buddha wasn't particularly surprised. He chanted, Guanyin Banti, you aren't a Buddhist disciple of my Buddhism sect, and you didn't condense my golden Buddha body. Therefore, you can't manifest your golden Buddha body in the lotus bathing pond. However, you have already attained the Bodhisattva Buddha fruit. Logically speaking, you should cleanse your past life's dust in the lotus bathing pond. Xiaohua looked at the Maitreya Buddha again. The Maitreya Buddha nodded slightly, expressing his agreement. Amitabha. Xiaohua chanted and stepped into the lotus bathing pond. Gurgle. As Xiaohua's figure stepped into the lotus bathing pond, bubbles appeared on the jade water. Within the bubbles, billions of small kiliocosms were born, and they all rushed into Xiaohua's body. Rumble. The sound was like thunder. The power of faith was born from the void and poured into Xiaohua's body continuously. Moreover, the jade water within the lotus bathing pond also surged upwards and rushed into Xiaohua's body along with the power of faith. Looking at the back of Xiaohua's head, a radiance suddenly appeared. However, before the radiance could take form, it burst like a bubble in the jade water. However, the radiance didn't dissipate. Instead, it shrunk to the back of Xiaohua's head like a withered flower. Gurgle. The power of faith was still pouring into Xiaohua's body. The jade water of the lotus bathing pond was also flowing endlessly. Radiances appeared and disappeared one after another, as if there was no end to them. What's going on? Seeing the water of the lotus bathing pond slowly disappearing under the 81 huge Buddha lotuses, the Mahavarakana Buddha and the Dipankara archaic Buddha were shocked. This was something that had never happened in the Thunder Sound Temple before. On the other hand, a faint smile appeared on the Maitreya Buddha's face. No one understood Xiaohua better than him. If Xiaohua didn't use his mind to store the jade water of the lotus bathing pond into his space, he wouldn't believe it. However, the Maitreya Buddha had wrongly accused Xiaohua. Although Xiaohua did use some tricks to take the lotus pond into the space, there were also Buddhist disciples in his space. He had to prepare the lotus pond for them in advance. The Buddha's Buddha, Buddha's Buddhas, Buddha's Buddha's Buddha, Buddha's Buddha Buddha, Buddha's 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 Buddha, Buddha Buddha Buddha, Buddha Buddha Buddha's Buddha Buddha Buddha, Buddha's Buddha Buddha Buddha's Buddha 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 Buddha, Buddha's Buddha into the Buddha Buddha, the Buddha Buddha Buddha. Buddha Buddha, Buddha Buddha, Buddha Buddha. What was special was that every time a ray of light was annihilated and fell into the crystal-like Godhead, the brightness of the star would increase, and the size of the Godhead would increase. The Godhead's brightness and size didn't change even once, giving Xiaohua an inexplicable feeling. This feeling was even more shocking than the collapse of the heavens and the earth. Within Xiaohua's space, the heavenly Dao Xiaohua and Karma Xiaohua had already taken form and surrounded the crystal-like Godhead. Not only did they comprehend this inexplicable feeling, they also firmly blocked the Godhead's changes. After an hour, Mahavairakana revered Buddha couldn't help but cough. Ahem, Namo Amitabha. Guanyin the Venerable, if you can't condense the golden body, you can just wash away all your mortal attachments. Not to mention the Mahavairakana revered one, even the Maitreya Buddha revered one couldn't stand it anymore. He gently reminded Xiaohua in his heart to not be too ostentatious. Ahem. Xiaohua regained his senses and coughed awkwardly. He put his palms together and said, Amitabha, this disciple has too many mortal attachments. I can't wash them away in a short period of time. I've caused the revered one to worry. As he said that, Xiaohua's figure slowly flew out of the lotus washing pond. Boom! Countless Buddhist lights were emitted from the surface of Xiaohua's body and madly pierced into the void. Xiaohua's body also slowly expanded until it reached 99 feet tall. Below his feet, a 9-grade lotus platform also slowly bloomed, supporting his body. Namo Amitabha. Namo Dipankara Archaic Buddha. Namo Maitreya Buddha, the three revered one chanted Buddhist names and stepped onto the Thunder Sound Temple's Buddhist platform. Waves of Buddhist names were emitted, and countless layers of Buddhist lights rushed out like flames. However, they also stagnated in mid-air. Within the Thunder Sound Temple's half-withered Buddhist lights, faint Buddhist lights seemed to be emitted, as if it was undergoing nirvanic rebirth. Senior apprentice brother, please. Namo Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva smiled and gestured for Xiaohua to step onto the Buddhist platform. Xiaohua pondered for a while. The 9-grade lotus platform beneath his feet activated, and he stood within the Namo Great Compassion Great Guanyin Bodhisattva's projection. As Xiaohua's figure descended, tens of thousands of condensed Buddha's light rushed out from the Lei Temple and scattered all over the Nirvana world. Within each temple, the previously vacant position of the Nanwa Great Merciful Guanyin Bodhisattva gave birth to a female Buddha with a solemn and graceful demeanor, wearing a crown on her head and a heavenly robe on her body. This Bodhisattva's Buddhist avatar had crescent-shaped brows and star-like eyes. Her jade-like face was naturally joyful, and her vermilion lips were slightly red. The pure vase of sweet dew was in its prime, and it was slanted into a poplar tree. Her appearance was completely different from Xiaohua's original appearance. Seeing the unfamiliar Bodhisattva avatar appearing, the three Buddhist lords were stunned. However, a moment later, a rare look of gratitude appeared in the Mahavairakana revered Buddha's eyes. The Dipankara Archaic Buddha revered Buddha's eyes suddenly came to a realization, while a smile appeared in the Maitreya Buddha revered Buddha's eyes. Namo Amitabha. Namo Dipankara Archaic Buddha. Namo Maitreya. The three Buddhas of the past, present, and future put their palms together and chanted Buddhist names. Layers of Buddhist light and faith were added to the Buddhist light that covered the entire Nirvana world. Many thanks to Guanyin the Venerable. The voice of Mahavairakana revered one sounded in Xiaohua's ears. Xiaohua smiled. He knew that Mahavairakana revered one had accepted his apology and revealed the grudge of him offending Buddhism in Longevity Town. After all, only a small number of cultivators knew the truth of Xiaohua's attainment in the immortal town, and the true believers of the three continents didn't know the specific situation. They only knew that Guanyin Bodhisattva was born in Nirvana. Now that he had chosen a female Dharma form, not only did it resemble the Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva of Nanwar in the hearts of the mortals, but it had also completely separated the image of the Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva from his own Taoist image. If a cultivator did not know the truth, it would be impossible to associate the Mahayana of Taoism with the four great bodhisattvas of Buddhism. In this way, he could take care of the Lei Temple's reputation, and also let Mahavairakana revered one have a decent explanation in front of the world. Of course, whether or not the golden Buddha statue of Nanwar Great Merciful Great Guanyin Bodhisattva in Longevity Town could be altered was not something that Xiaohua could control. Many people in Longevity Town had seen Xiaohua's appearance. Amitabha Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, Amitabha Buddha. In the Lei Temple, thousands of Buddhas chanted, The heavenly dragons and fairies added to the fun, and the heavenly flowers scattered everywhere. After the time of half a cup of tea, the vision of Guanyin Bodhisattva sitting down gradually disappeared. Mahavairakana revered one opened his mouth and said, "Disciples, today's preaching has ended. I have something to discuss with Guanyin the Venerable. You all can leave now." Amitabha Buddha. We will obey the Buddha's decree. The group of Buddhas bowed and slowly disappeared into the void, leaving the Layin temple. Seeing this, Nanwa Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva also put his palms together and said, "Revered one, disciple will leave now. Go." Mahavairakana revered one nodded lightly. After Manjushri Bodhisattva left, Mahavairakana revered one's gaze landed on the faintly recovering Buddha light, and a look of realization appeared on his face. Nanwa Dipankara Archaic Buddha. Dipankara Archaic Buddha revered one chanted and asked softly, "I thank Guanyin the Venerable." "I dare not." Xiaohua hurriedly returned the greeting. "The longevity town's mistake wasn't my intention. However, it was an unintentional mistake, and I have to make up for it. Since I can't enter the Buddhism sect, I can only use Guanyin the Venerable's Dharma idol to replace my original form." Nanwa Maitreya Buddha. Mahavairakana revered one chanted, "Mortals can only see the Dharma idol. You have already made up for your previous mistake." Dipankara Archaic Buddha revered one smiled and said, "You didn't come here just to make up for your mistake, right? To be able to invite Mahavairakana revered one here, it must be something extremely important." "That's right." Xiaohua didn't hide anything and answered, "I came to the Thunder Sound Temple because I have 3 extremely important matters to ask Mahavairakana revered one." "Oh, what are the important matters?" Dipankara Archaic Buddha revered one asked curiously. "Whatever Mahavairakana revered one knows, I know as well. Why didn't you say it during the Jade Pool conclave? Why did you wait until now?" "That was that day and today is today. Perhaps tomorrow. I will still have 3 other questions to ask Mahavairakana revered one." Xiaohua answered with a smile. Mahavairakana revered one retracted his gaze from the extinguished Buddha light and looked straight at Xiaohua, saying, "Venerable, before you ask me 3 questions, can I ask you 2 questions?" Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat, and he forced a smile saying, "Amitabha revered one, please speak. However, this disciple cannot guarantee that this disciple will be able to give you a satisfactory answer to your question. If you can, that's for the best. If you can't, it's fine too." Mahavairakana revered one answered calmly, "Who can say that they know everything in this world? Even immortal Emperor Gochen's clear heavenly mirror and my heavenly eye connection can't see through the hidden immortal continent and the pure land of ultimate bliss." "Then revered one, please speak." Xiaohua nodded. "My first question is," Mahavairakana revered one raised his hand and pointed at the half-withered Buddha light of the Thunder Sound Temple, asking, "Why did my withered Buddha light show signs of rebirth when Guanyin descended upon my Thunder Sound Temple? Then, let's fight. Give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it as thanks for all your support." You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.